Chapter 828. The snow outside the window fell on the ground. The pen in his hand fell on it. It made a rustling sound. Seung-yu's expression was focused and solemn. The content he wrote in his hand was a bunch of meaningless gibberish in the eyes of others. It needed a corresponding set of code words to translate. It was all about the situation in Chioshui City. His thinking was smooth and clear, and there was no pause in his writing. The Beihai he liked was the Beihai of Zhongzhou State. It was destined to be the coldest time before the warm spring flowers bloomed. If this cold could be endured by Beihai in exchange for a better Zhongzhou State and a better future, it was definitely worth it. He couldn't represent anyone, and he couldn't make decisions for Beihai. But this was his personal thought and will, just like the letter he was writing now. It was only his personal thought and will. In more than 20 years, the top spy in the coat of an electrodynamics engineer had nearly 30 loyal men of sacrifice in his hands. He himself was an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. He used all the resources in his hands to form a detailed network of contacts. And this network occupied most of the content of his letter. He really liked Beihai that completely belonged to Zhongzhou State. This game had nothing to do with right or wrong, justice or evil, greatness or despicableness. There was only victory or defeat, only the result. He thought this result was right, so he went all out without reservation. If they could succeed, decades later, when they were old, they might be able to proudly tell their descendants that it was they who led the future direction and path of Beihai. The letter was very long. Seung-yu changed several sheets of letter paper. The hibernation plan was over. This should be the last report before the awakening plan was launched, so Seung-yu took out all the chips in his heart. He had nearly 30 men of sacrifice. Beside him were two of his colleagues who had participated in the hibernation plan with him. Now one of them was already a high-ranking official in the Chioshui city government, while the other was a famous doctor in Chioshui. Both of them had also secretly cultivated their own team. Due to excessive caution, the scale of such a team was not large. The three of them added up, the number of people they could use was about 80. But also because of caution, these dozens of people were completely trusted confidants. As the deputy team leader of Team 7, who had been lurking in autumn water, Seung-yu had spent a long time researching what kind of effect these people could have when they were put together. From the very beginning until now, over 20 years had passed. Seung-yu had been pondering over the countless combinations that could play an incomparably huge role. And this was what he was writing in the letter now. If he gave it his all, he and his two colleagues could assassinate 2 second-level targets, 5 third-level targets, and some other key figures in Chioshui City in 6 hours. They could make Chioshui City fall into the greatest chaos in the first place. The so-called second-level assassination target was Seung-yu's own standard. In his mind, there were 6 second-level targets in Chioshui City. The mayor and the speaker of Chioshui City were second-level targets, and there were several core members of the Huangfu family in Chioshui City. The first-level target was the patriarch of the Huangfu family. Seung-yu was confident to assassinate the 2 second-level targets. One was the mayor of Chioshui City, and the other was a core member of the Huangfu family. Once these two people died, the entire Chioshui City would be completely shocked within a few hours. In order to track down the murderer, the Huangfu family must take a series of measures, and they could not care about the action of Mount Dibbing and similar lurking groups. Seung-yu could be sure that there was at least one group in Chioshui City, and other cities in Beihai province should also have such lurking groups. As long as they took action, the entire Beihai would be in darkness. Seung-yu took a deep breath and thought of his life in Beihai for more than 20 years. A touch of pity flashed in his heart, and then he became firm. He picked up the pen again. Without using code words, he directly wrote 4 words at the end of the letter. For Zhongzhou State. He looked at the signature on the letter, carefully recalled the content of the letter, and said with some satisfaction, "Not bad." Behind him, another person also said with satisfaction, "Not bad." In the dead of night, there was only the sound of falling snow outside the window. The sudden praise fell in Seung-yu's ears like a thunder. His brain became blank in an instant, and his body tensed up. The power of the peak of the thunder-shocking realm was condensed completely out of instinct. A dazzling electric arc flashed in his hand. He reached out. Attack. Hum. A muffled groan of extreme pain sounded. Sungyu's attack did not cause any movement. The dazzling electric arc became extremely weak at the moment he attacked. He raised his arm, and then it flew out. Blood sprayed directly on the ground from the broken arm. In the light footsteps, a slender hand with a scar on the back of the hand reached out and took away the letter he had just written. Sungyu, whose face was distorted because of the pain, was still at a loss. He turned his head carefully. Standing in his line of sight was a tall, short-haired woman with a long scar on her face, expressionless. She held the letter and lowered her head to read the contents. After a long while, she slowly said, "I don't understand." Sungyu's body trembled involuntarily in pain. He gritted his teeth and was about to say something harsh, but the woman had directly thrown the letter in her hand in another direction. "Explain, what do you mean?" Sungyu wanted to turn his body in that direction, but as soon as he moved one leg, the heart-wrenching pain suddenly spread from his leg to his brain. There was no raging fire, no thunder, no vibration of the air around him. And it was not the domain of the invincible realm. He did not feel any danger. But at this moment, it seemed that everything around him was dangerous. It was as if his body was tightly bound by an incomparably sharp but invisible rope. Even the slightest movement would cause him to bleed profusely, and he might even be torn to pieces. He glanced at the woman beside him out of the corner of his eye. She stood quietly, but the aura all over her body was like that of a fierce and silent beast. At this moment, Sungyu did not think about who she was. He was curious as to how the other party had come and how they knew his identity. "This is our code word." A hoarse voice sounded behind Sungyu. The trembling voice was filled with extreme fear and pain. "This is a network of contacts, all of which belong to the men of sacrifice trained by him and the other two team members. The letter wrote the identity of the men of sacrifice and what they could do together." "What is it?" the beast-like short-haired woman asked in a flat tone. She stood there like a real beast, light, sharp, calm, and incomparably ferocious. "The seventh team." The voice behind him was silent for a while. No one knew whether it was hesitation or to ease the pain. "The third member of the seventh team is now the secretary of the mayor of Chioshui City. Do you know what you are doing?" Sungyu suddenly growled in a sharp voice. He opened his eyes wide, and his eyes were full of disbelief. His letter was written in their own code word. To be exact, it was the code word of the seventh team. Except for the members of their team, no one could understand the content of the code word. There were 4 members in the seventh team. He was the deputy captain and number 2. The identity of number 3 had been revealed. He was very familiar with number 4 and his voice. The voice behind him was not the voice of number 4. The only answer. He was the leader of the 7th team. Everything had an answer. Sungyu finally knew why the beast around him would find him here. She caught the leader of the 7th team. Ironically, even Sungyu did not know who the leader was. So how did she know? "Shut up." The woman waved her hand. Sungyu also could not feel any fluctuations in martial arts. He could not see the slightest light and shadow, but his whole body was completely imprisoned in an instant. He could not say a word. "Go on." She casually walked a few steps and pointed to the letter. In the corner where Sungyu could not see, the intermittent voice became more and more frightened and dry, but also clearer and clearer. Clearly, he read the letter almost word by word. Sungyu's face was ashen. It was hard for him to believe that the 7th team had such a spineless patriarch. The woman listened silently and then waved her hand again. The invisible imprisonment disappeared in an instant. Sungyu regained the ability to speak. "You want to play big?" The woman looked at him with a playful look in her eyes. "If it was before, I would be very happy to see this scene, but I promised my sister." She suddenly shook her head in annoyance and lost interest in continuing. She just said, "Is what he said true? Do you have anything to add?" "Who are you?" Sungyu turned his head slightly. His face was instantly drenched in blood, coupled with his resentful and despairing eyes. He looked incomparably ferocious. "Xia Huang." The woman said faintly, "Xiaji's sister." Sungyu smiled bitterly. "When did you?" His cell phone suddenly rang. Phoenix frowned, took out the phone, looked at the number, and directly answered. What's the matter? Auntie, how is Qiushui City? Wang Shengxiao's voice came from the phone, cold and gloomy. The 7th team has been solved, but I'm not sure if there are other teams. Phoenix said calmly. Ask. Wang Shengxiao took a deep breath. There was obvious anger and killing intent in his voice, but he was trying hard to restrain himself. Ask the leader of the 7th team about the latest task they received. How is the implementation going? Is there any clue? Wang Shengxiao's voice could be said with a pause, and Phoenix could even clearly feel the sound of his teeth gritting. The latest task? What task? Phoenix glanced at the leader of the 7th team. The patriarch, who had already had a nervous breakdown, shook his head blankly. He doesn't know. Phoenix said directly. He didn't believe that the other party would dare to lie in his hands. He probably didn't receive the task. So there must be another team in Qiushui City. Wang Shengxiao sneered. Maybe. Phoenix nodded. I'll take the people of the 7th team back. You can ask carefully. No need. Wang Shengxiao's voice was cold. Kill them all. Phoenix was slightly stunned. Kill them all? This was completely different from the original plan. These were all people from Zhongzhou State, especially the leader of the 7th team, who was only half a step away from being a general. Kill them all? Phoenix narrowed her eyes. Are you sure? These are all Zhongzhou State. Kill. Kill them all. Send the bodies back to Zhongzhou State. These bastards, they are now looking for Yuetong. The latest task this group of people received is to kill Yuetong. They deserve to die. They all deserve to die. Wang Shengxiao suddenly roared. Kill them all. Phoenix was stunned for a moment and silently hung up the phone. Sung Yu, who had heard the rage of the new patriarch of Beihai, looked stupefied. He looked at Phoenix in front of him without saying a word. It seems that you are very determined. Phoenix said slowly. So determined. She slowly raised her hand. You, she flicked her fingers gently. Phoenix's voice became the only sound in Sung Yu's ears. Do you really want to die so badly? Sung Yu opened his eyes wide. Before he died, his keen and incredible observation finally allowed him to discover the way this woman attacked. In the stable space, there seemed to be a grain on her finger. It was sparkling and translucent, like a tiny ice crystal that was hard to notice. The ice crystal landed on his body. Suddenly, there was only a surging tide in his ears. The surging tide was a dazzling scarlet red. The blood all over Sung Yu's body burst out in an instant. Countless amounts of blood gathered and compressed in the air, fell into Phoenix's hand, and turned into a crystal-clear scarlet bead. Phoenix directly threw the bead into her mouth and ate it. She said calmly, then go to hell. Chapter 829. A repressed and distorted voice filled with extreme pain echoed in the pale white room. A fine column of blood splashed in the room, fell to the ground, and flowed along the floor. The sharp and thin blade slowly cut open the flesh, and pieces of broken bones and tendons were slowly picked out one by one. Twitching, struggling, trembling, gasping, the pain was extreme, and the sound made by the man was close to the whimper of a dying beast. His eyes had cracked, his teeth had been bitten, and the blade had completely destroyed one of his calves. In the repeated cycle of pain, he could even clearly feel that his body was patiently destroyed little by little, and he could clearly hear the sound of blood flowing on the ground. In front of him was a pair of indifferent eyes. This pair of eyes was very young, but they contained an extremely cruel killing intent and madness. He gasped hard, and his pupils had become a little dim. But when he looked into the eyes, there was still an unyielding look. You won't die, Major General. In the low murmur like a demon, the young eyes blinked. At least not for the time being. An injection pierced into his body. The thick liquid seemed to have endless vitality. When the drug entered his body, he felt cool, and his spirit was completely restored. No, not only a complete recovery, but a state of excitement beyond the past. He could feel every corner of his body, every bit of pain. The heart-wrenching, lung-splitting pain was transmitted to his brain. Every breath he took was accompanied by unimaginable pain. He knew what it was. Zhongzhou State also had this kind of drug, codenamed torture. At first, it was the formula provided by the Wang family of Beihai. Torture was not a drug for combatants. Just like its codename, it was an auxiliary drug for torture. Its effect was to increase the physical sensitivity of the tortured person and concentrate the opponent's attention. To put it simply, torture would multiply the torture of the tortured person, and at the same time he would not pass out. The torture effect of the Wang family of Beihai was even more powerful. They added some failed immortality potions into it. They did not consider the toxins in the failed products. Once this kind of torture was injected, the injected person's spirit would be more concentrated, his perception would be more sensitive, and his resilience would be greatly increased, which greatly prolonged the torture time. For any tortured person, this was the cruelest nightmare. Does it feel good? A low and cruel voice slowly sounded. You will feel it for a long time. Kill me, Wang Shengxiao, kill me. His wounds were healing under the effect of the torture drug. The tearing pain and the indescribable itch took effect at the same time. His face suddenly twisted, and he roared at the top of his lungs. Killing you is easy. Wang Shengxiao took half a step back. Tell me, how many people do you have in Xingzhou? Who participated in the so-called new task? Who gave you the task? Tell me, and I'll give you a quick death. Dream on. He gritted his teeth, his voice sinister. Wang Shengxiao said expressionlessly, Go on. The heart-wrenching screams became louder again. At the man's feet were several torture talents specially trained by the Wang family of Beihai. Their techniques were precise and comparable to the best surgeons. As long as they were given time, they could cut the man's body into pieces of minced meat bit by bit. This was exactly what Wang Shengxiao wanted. Cruel? Cold-blooded? Inhumane? Wang Shengxiao didn't bother to think about it. In his heart, the man in front of him was an enemy. Yes, an enemy. That was enough. Before this, Wang Shengxiao had never thought that he would regard this kind of person in front of him as a real enemy. The man's code name was Grey Rat, a senior agent of Zhongzhou State. He belonged to the 11th Bureau of the Ministry of Security and had the rank of Major General. He was the highest intelligence person in charge of Zhongzhou State lurking in Shenzhou. It could even be said that he was the highest intelligence person in charge of several cities in the north of Beihai province. Combining the intelligence of both Beihai and Samsara Palace, Xianming and Lu Shuanghua eliminated countless obstacles created by people, and finally completely locked on Grey Rat's identity. Song Qiong personally took action and captured Grey Rat. Although he was captured, the outcome of the battle was not ideal. There was a mistake in the intelligence report, and the capture this time did not end up as expected. Their thunderous operation in the Shenzhou continent ended up capturing less than 10 people. To be exact, there were only 9. Each of the 9 people was indeed the top lurking talent of Zhongzhou State. But in the vast Shenzhou city, it was impossible for there to be only 10 people. Although it did not achieve the expected result, it was also an unexpected gain. Not everyone had a steel will that could face death with equanimity. Grey Rat, of course, Grey Rat was unyielding, but the other elites naturally could not hold on in the cruel and unimaginable torture. 6 of the 9 people chose to commit suicide as soon as they were caught. After one of them failed to commit suicide, Wang Shengxiao directly pried open his mouth with the cruelest means. He learned their identities, learned Grey Rat's position, and also learned about the termination plan. The termination plan was independent of the hibernation plan and the awakening plan. This plan had existed more than a year ago, but at that time it was called the control plan, and the content was to find Wang Yuetong. But a few months ago, the control plan suddenly became the termination plan. The content was no longer to find. It was to kill Wang Yuetong. As soon as everyone saw Wang Yuetong, they must kill Wang Yuetong at all costs, destroy her body, and then secretly return to their country. This was the termination plan. It was simple and clear. The time when the plan was changed was probably after Wang Shengxiao visited Li Tianlan in the desert prison. What this meant couldn't be clearer. Xianming. Wang Shengxiao looked at Grey Rat's struggle and scream and suddenly called out. Xianming took a step forward and bowed his head slightly. Do you think the news about Yuetong was speculated by them, or did someone leak the news? This question seemed unimportant. But it was very important. No one will leak this kind of news. Xianming said quietly. There are not many people who know the content of the negotiation between you and Li Tianlan. They can be trusted, and Emperor Dong's palace will not leak the news either. It's not good for them. Li Tianlan doesn't look like the person who would do such a thing. So this is speculation? Wang Shengxiao's smile grew colder. Wang Yuetong was very important in the negotiation between Wang Shengxiao and Li Tianlan. Wang Shengxiao's sister. Li Tianlan's woman. What was the relationship between Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao? This was a good entry point. The grievances between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai were extremely complicated. With Wang Yuetong as the entry point, they could at least talk about one thing, that was Wang Yuetong or her future. If Wang Yuetong became the patriarch, it would be the biggest benefit for Li Tianlan in this cooperation, and he would definitely take action. What if Wang Yuetong died? If Li Tianlan killed Wang Yuetong, and then cooperated with the Wang family of Beihai, the benefits were limited, and the risks were obviously greater than the benefits. Killing Wang Yuetong was tantamount to infinitely reducing the possibility of Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao joining hands. This was easy to speculate. There might be all kinds of people in the parliament, but there would be no fools. However, they could speculate, but they had no evidence. In the absence of evidence, they launched a so-called termination plan to take action against Wang Yuetong, the core member of the Wang family of Beihai. They would find Wang Yuetong at all costs and kill her. Just because of a speculation. Wang Shengxiao scratched his chin. His face, which looked gentle most of the time, was a little twisted and ferocious. They are crazy. Wang Shengxiao looked at Xianming and said with certainty. Xianming sighed and did not speak. He agreed with Wang Shengxiao. At the beginning, no one thought that this game would be so fierce. In the so-called game, there were compromises, concessions, gains and losses, and finally a new balance was reached, creating a situation acceptable to all parties. But now, some people in the parliament, or someone, had undoubtedly begun to ignore the rules and began to kill. When he started the plan, he did not even consider the consequences. For that person, it was good that Wang Yuetong died, but he obviously did not think of the consequences after the termination plan was exposed. Someone was indeed crazy. What on earth happened to make the other party's mentality unbalanced to such an extent? This is not a game. Wang Shengxiao whispered, this is destruction. Xianming's face changed slightly. Wang Shengxiao glanced at Grey Rat, who was covered in blood. One of Grey Rat's calves had been broken, countless blood vessels and muscles were torn out, and small pieces of broken bones were thrown on the ground. Wang Shengxiao smiled and waved his hand. The door of the torture room was opened. A man of few words walked in with a huge wolfhound on his leash. Seeing the broken flesh and bones on the ground, the huge wolf dog was obviously a little anxious. Wang Shengxiao nodded. The man. Loosening his grip, the wolf dog rushed out and lay on the ground to gnaw on Grey Rat's flesh. Grey Rat, who had become a little dispirited, suddenly struggled again when he saw this scene. His cry was filled with endless fear. Go on. Wang Shengxiao said. Don't let him die. There's enough potion. If he can't hold on, you can use the enhanced version of the potion. He glanced at Grey Rat and said calmly. In addition, inform Minister Fan Tianin to investigate Grey Rat's identity. If he has family and friends, bring them all to Beihai. He reached out and touched the wolf dog, who was eating with its head down, with a feminine smile. How much meat can such a big dog eat? Xianming suddenly shivered. Wang Shengxiao. Grey Rat's extremely resentful roar suddenly rang out. F*CKU. Pa! Wang Shengxiao slapped Grey Rat directly in the face. Don't talk about these useless things. Wang Shengxiao said calmly. If you win, the people behind you will treat me the same way, my family, parents, and children. Now you're in my hands. It's fair for me to treat your family, children, and parents like this. Everything you enjoy now, your family will also enjoy. After I feed this dog, I will send it to the parliament and let them have a taste of a dog that has eaten human flesh. Isn't it delicious? Within 3 days, your family will come to accompany you. Wang Shengxiao turned around and walked out of the torture room. He said expressionlessly, Don't kill him. At least don't let him die in front of his family. Gray Rat stared at Wang Shengxiao's back. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes. And then he became more and more painful. Patriarch. Xianming followed Wang Shengxiao out of the torture room. He hesitated and asked, "Should we inform Emperor Dong's palace about the termination plan?" "What?" Wang Shengxiao said expressionlessly. "Do you think I can't protect my sister?" Xianming felt cold all over and shook his head subconsciously. He took a deep breath and said, "Of course I don't mean that. It's just that we are cooperating with Emperor Dong's palace now. If we hide this matter, it's meaningless. It will only cause estrangement between us and the other party. Moreover, the intelligence system of Samsara Palace is very powerful. The other party can launch the termination plan in Beihai. There may be similar plans outside Beihai." Wang Xingxiao was silent for a long time before he nodded and said yes. Xianming quietly breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "What should we do next?" "Next?" Wang Shengxiao smiled and said, "What do you think we should do?" Li Huaxing, Chen Fangqing, the academics, the Prince Group. Wang Shengxiao muttered to himself and suddenly said, "Who do you think is most likely to go crazy at the moment? Or perhaps they've all gone mad?" Xianming hesitated and said slowly, "Chen Fangqing." Wang Shengxiao hummed indifferently, as if he agreed, but also as if he was asking. The Prime Minister attaches great importance to the interests of Zhongzhou State, and his means are sometimes too harsh. In recent years, he has done a lot of things secretly in Africa and America. That's a means of external affairs, and no one said anything. Moreover, he will retire next year and has no time. At this time, his mentality is likely to have some problems. The style of the termination plan is very like his means. Xianming paused and continued. Compared with him, the president still has time. He is likely to be re-elected next time. And the means of the entire academics are relatively mild. "So?" Wang Shengxiao asked. "So," Xianming hesitated and said, "So I think there may be differences between the president and the prime minister. The president is likely to be unable to control the current situation. Patriarch, Grey Rat has been lurking in Beihai for more than 20 years. 20 years ago, the academics was not strong. The giants who decided to launch the hibernation plan at that time have now retired. As for the influence of those old people who have retired but still have great influence, the academics is very weak in this respect. Chen Fangqing is strong." "That makes sense." Wang Shengxiao nodded and said, "So he's crazy." Xianming did not speak. Wang Shengxiao's smile became more and more unbridled. "Xianming, do you know what kind of person is the most suitable to deal with this kind of lunatic?" Xianming's expression was tense, and he shook his head. "Ordinary people can't deal with a lunatic, especially a lunatic in a high position." Wang Shengxiao murmured. "Only a lunatic crazier than him, can deal with this kind of lunatic. Go and pass the order. I'm going to tell that lunatic a truth that he can easily understand. From now on, those who are good at the border of Beihai die." Chapter 830. Kanglan City, Chongqing Street. From the height of the 16th floor, Enchantress looked at a snack bar on the edge of the street through binoculars. Her expression was calm, indifferent, and full of patience, like a hunter waiting for her prey to take the bait. "Are you sure it's today?" Enchantress chewed the gum in her mouth and asked casually. "It's today." A middle-aged man adjusted his glasses and said in a calm voice, "The confirmed time is 3:30 at night." He was the main person in charge of the intelligence of Kanglan City in Beihai Province. His name was Jiang Xiu, one of the top executives of the Jiang family of Kanglan City. In the Jiang family, he was also in charge of intelligence work, and was the second person in charge of the intelligence of the Jiang family. But most of the time, he worked for Mount Dibing and coordinated the intelligence between Mount Dibing and the Jiang family to make the intelligence work of Beihai more detailed. The whole Beihai was generally like this. Mount Dibing would not send direct descendants to personally control the intelligence system of each city. Generally, talents were selected and appointed from within the major sword-holding families. Those who were selected would not only become the person in charge of the intelligence of a city, but also the second person in charge of the internal intelligence system of the sword-holding family. For example, Huangfu Renjie of the Huangfu family in Qiushui. Jiang Xiu of the Jiang family of Kanglan City was the same. Enchantress looked at her watch. It was already 2:50 at night. "Can't you all sit still?" she sneered in a low voice. The old ancestor died more than a year ago, and Dijiang was expelled. In the eyes of others, the Jiang family is inevitably like a toothless tiger, so they invested a lot of power in Kanglan City. Until now, they have only coordinated. They are more patient. Enchantress was expressionless, but the killing intent on her body was getting sharper. The snack bar in the binoculars was their harvest 3 days ago. The Jiang family secretly controlled an elite of Jifeng sword training school and forced the location of the snack bar from him. However, the elite of Jifeng sword training school did not know who was behind the snack bar. They were not even sure if it was the location of Jifeng sword training school. But for the Wang family of Beihai, as long as they had the location, it was not difficult to trace it. After a deep investigation, the Wang family of Beihai confirmed that the owner of the snack bar had belonged to a special force of Zhongzhou State many years ago and came to Beihai after retirement. Wang Shengxiao personally communicated with Fan Tianin. The Ministry of State Security of Zhongzhou State took a secret action and used the snack bar as a clue. Most of a detailed intelligence network had appeared in the sight of the Wang family of Beihai. This could be said to be the biggest reward of their search so far, because this snack bar was the core gathering point established by Zhongzhou State in Kanglan City. Jiang Xiu had squeezed out all the value of that elite of the Jifeng sword training school. According to the information he had provided, they had received a secret order 3 days ago to gather at this snack bar today and coordinate with the major forces to come up with the final plan of action. Coordinate with the major forces. This sentence was enough to show that there was more than one force gathered in the snack bar today. What did it mean for more than one force to gather in the hiding place of Zhongzhou State? Jiang Xiu's phone kept ringing. He lowered his head and browsed through the news from everywhere on his mobile phone. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, "If I'm not mistaken, if our action goes well today, we can probably catch all the lurkers of all the superpowers, including Zhongzhou State. At least we can eliminate more than 80% of their strength." "What's the reason?" The enchantress raised her eyebrows. Because of the current situation of the Jiang family and the geographical location of Kanglan City. Jiang Xiu's voice was still slow, but his eyes flashed with a heart-palpitating coldness. The Jiang family is in a very bad situation right now. In the past year or so, we have lost 2 invincible realm experts. The old ancestor DK died in the hands of Li Tianlan, and Dijiang was also expelled and imprisoned. The strength of the Jiang family has been greatly damaged. When the old ancestor was alive, we were faintly the number 1 family among the 7 sword-holding families. With Dijiang, how glorious was the Jiang family in the past. Without these 2 people, the foundation of the Jiang family is still there. But in the eyes of outsiders, we are inevitably weak. It can even be said that we are the weakest of the 7 major sword-holding families. In addition, the position of Kanglan City in Beihai is very special. It is right in the middle of Beihai province. Across the Kanglan River is the northern part of Beihai. If I want to deal with the Wang family of Beihai, my first target must be the Jiang family in Kanglan City. First, the Jiang family is weak and not strong enough, so I can take advantage of it. Second, as long as Kanglan City is in chaos, it is easy to attract some of the attention of Mount Dibbing and pin them down here. Third, when Kanglan City is in chaos to the extreme, its leader can calmly decide to go north and attack Mount Dibbing, even if it fails. Jiang Xiu smiled and suddenly said, "South of Kanglan City is Tongtian Port, Chen Clan." He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. But the enchantress understood what he meant. The Chen clan of Tongtian Port was the weakest among the 7 major sword-holding families. Li Tianlan even destroyed their headquarters with 1 sword stroke, and the elites and experts of the Chen clan were also heavily injured or killed. Even if the total attack on Mount Dibbing fails, the allied forces of several superpowers will go south with Kanglan City as the center. The Jiang family is weak, and the Chen clan is even more powerless to fight back. If we go south, Chioshui and Huangfurenjie might not be clean, right? If we go south, it will be East Island. What a coincidence. In this war, East Island is still the main force. What does this mean? Jiang Xiu patted the enchantress on the shoulder. The enchantress stepped aside. Jiang Xiu looked at the snack bar in the middle of the night through the telescope, narrowed his eyes and said softly, "This means that as long as they take down Kanglan City, they will have the absolute initiative. If they go further, they can destroy Mount Dibing. Even if they can't do it, they can take away half of Beihai with Kanglan City as the center. In Kanglan City, Jiangqian and Mount Dibing really rule by dividing the river. As long as they succeed here, they can be invincible. Don't forget that the land of 80,000 square kilometers south of Kanglan River belonged to East Island hundreds of years ago. They have never given up. This time they have such a good opportunity, they will do whatever it takes." The enchantress was silent for a long time, and then said softly, "So you mean that tonight's gathering in the snack bar may be a precursor to their general attack? All the superpowers have coordinated. If they don't take action, are they waiting for the new year?" Jiang Xiu laughed. "Let's take action here first. In the first battle, they must go all out. I'm sure that there are more experts lurking in Kanglan City than we think. Maybe they want more than just chaos." Jiang Xiu's eyes were a little ferocious. "They want to completely destroy our Jiang family. They can't do it." The enchantress's eyes suddenly bloomed with an extremely sharp killing intent. "We came at the right time. In that case, let's catch them all directly. Beep." The slightly harsh sound rang for a moment. This was the special ringtone set by Jiang Xiu. His face changed. He looked down at the phone, and his face suddenly became dignified. "What's wrong?" the enchantress asked slowly. "It's a new order from the patriarch." Jiang Xiu looked down at the phone. His tone was very slow, and every word carried extreme pressure and killing intent. "Anyone who enters the border of Beihai will die. No matter who it is, no one will be left alive." The enchantress's expression also changed slightly. "Anyone who enters the border of Beihai will die. No matter who it is, no one will be left alive?" According to the information they had, the lurker in the snack bar was a real major general of Zhongzhou State. Wang Shengxiao must have known this. But he still gave the order. No matter who it was. A blood-red color flashed in the enchantress's eyes, and her eyes gradually became determined. She didn't know what happened in Mount Dibing tonight. But from Wang Shengxiao's order, there was no doubt that the game had escalated. Now it was a real war. "Get ready. Kill them all," the enchantress said slowly. "I don't think we can defeat them." The muscles on Jiang Xiu's face twitched. After all, the enchantress was one of them, so he didn't feel humiliated, just helpless and angry. The Jiang family of Kanglan was loyal, brave and fearless. Among the 7 sword-holding families, the Jiang family was always the bravest one, always full of fighting spirit. But now, facing the enemy at his doorstep, he, a core member of the Jiang family, said he couldn't defeat them. This feeling, if the old ancestor was still here, if Di Jiang was still here, Jiang Xiu clenched his teeth and finally smiled bitterly. Even if we transfer people from the family headquarters, it's still too late. Who knows, we might even alert the enemy. If the experts of the major forces hiding in Kanglan really gather here, there might be variables. The enchantress gave him a strange look. "Do you think I'm here just to monitor them?" Jiang Xiu was stunned. "What am I doing here if I'm not fully prepared?" the enchantress asked again. Jiang Xiu seriously thought about the people brought by the enchantress. The enchantress was now a half-step to the invincible realm, and she brought 2 masters at the peak of the thundershocking realm. Jiang Xiu was also a master of the thundershocking realm. There were 2 people in the Jiang family who were in the same realm as him. This force was really not weak. However, if he wanted to capture all of them in one fell swoop, it seemed to be somewhat insufficient. "It's hard." Jiang Xiu shook his head. "It's not hard," the enchantress said blandly. "Just watch." A group of figures appeared in the telescope. A team of about a dozen people walked together. Everyone was chatting loudly. They were dressed in plain clothes stained with dust, like a group of workers who just got off work late at night. They looked natural, laughing, and walked into the snack bar. Two middle-aged couples, who seemed to be traveling here, walked in behind the group of workers with their suitcases. The night was quiet. The noisy voices of the workers spread far away in the night. The enchantress raised the corner of her mouth, a little sarcastic. Through the telescope he saw it clearly. When one of the workers put his arm around his workmate's shoulder, a bright light flashed on his wrist. That watch, if the enchantress was right, was called Vacheron Constantine. It was 100% authentic. If this was really a group of workers, then they couldn't afford that watch with a year's salary. The target appeared. The enchantress didn't know who they were, which forces they came from, and what task they had. She picked up the walkie-talkie with some regret and said calmly, "Search for suspicious people within a radius of 3 kilometers from the snack bar." The sound of machine operation came from the walkie-talkie. The staff on the other end was scanning the whole process with the help of military satellites. "Sir, no suspicious targets found." The enchantress nodded and continued, "Expand the range 5 kilometers." "Sir, no suspicious targets found." The enchantress looked at her watch. There were still 3 minutes before they met. This kind of joint action meeting of all forces was not going to happen. Someone would be late. So, was everyone here? The enchantress switched the channel of the walkie-talkie and whispered, "It's time to send them on their way." Now, Jiang Xiu asked directly. He had no confidence in his heart. But as a member of the Jiang family, for Mount Dibing, and for Beihai, he would not flinch, even if he was smashed to pieces. "We don't need you." The enchantress shook her head and said, "Just watch." "You want to do it yourself?" Jiang Xiu thought the enchantress was crazy. "We don't need me," the enchantress said flatly. "If it's a normal arrest, we all have to do it. That's why we prepared a lot of people. But the patriarch has a new order to kill all of them here. In this way things are easier. Shengzhou has Firmament, Qiushui has Xiaohuang, and Mount Dibing also knows the importance of Kanglin. My strength is not as good as Firmament and Xiaohuang. How can I come here alone?" Jiang Xiu's eyes lit up slightly. "There are experts from Mount Dibing secretly accompanying you? Who is it?" The enchantress chuckled and said, "Do you know Firmament?" "Firmament?" Jiang Xiu was stunned. "He is still in Shengzhou. I mean, do you know Firmament's identity in the Wang family of Beihai? Not his current identity, but his previous identity." Firmament's previous identity in the Wang family of Beihai. Jiang Xiu was in a trance. Firmament was now the vice commander of the Beihai Corps. In the case that the patriarch was only a name in the Beihai Corps, he could be said to be the highest officer of the hundreds of thousands of troops in the Beihai Corps. He had a high position, and was only under one person. Wang Shengxiao could be said to have absolute trust in him. What about before Firmament became the vice commander of the Beihai Corps? Why did Wang Shengxiao trust him so much? It was because of Firmament's identity. There were many experts in the Wang family of Beihai. Almost every expert of the Thundershocking realm had their own duties. They were either appointed internally or sent out. The enchantress had been sent out to the Sky Academy in Huating. Firmament could be said to be the top expert in the entire Mount Dibing. He was the top expert of the half-step invincible realm. But he was also a special person. Before Xiaohuang appeared, Firmament could vaguely be regarded as the first person under the invincible realm in Mount Dibing. But he did not hold any official position in Mount Dibing, nor was he sent out. Although he occasionally dealt with some things for Mount Dibing, most of the time he stayed with Wang Shengxiao. He was like an idler, or in other words, a bodyguard. The Dark World was very familiar with the style of the Wang family of Beihai, so no one dared to look down on Firmament. For people like Firmament, the Dark World called them protectors. They were the protectors of the future patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai. They were the most trusted bodyguards of the patriarch and the future patriarch. They were the top expert of the half-step invincible realm. When the Wang family of Beihai was at its peak, there were even protectors of the invincible realm. Firmament was Wang Shengxiao's protector. "You mean protector?" Jiang Xiu took a deep breath and asked softly. "Yes, protector." The enchantress smiled. Firmament is Wang Shengxiao's protector. Everyone knows this. Old Master Heaven Saber DK was the protector of the old patriarch. Your Jiang family must know this. She lowered her head and adjusted the channel of the walkie-talkie. She said lightly, "But so many years have passed. Do you still know who the protector of His Majesty Sword Emperor was?" The walkie-talkie was adjusted to the last channel. The enchantress's expression was solemn and solemn. She said calmly, "Senior, please take action. Don't be merciful." Jiang Xiu's expression changed dramatically. She suddenly turned around and looked out of the window. In an instant, the dead night outside the window was suddenly illuminated by endless light. The light surged wantonly in the night, surging endlessly. Tens of thousands of blue electric arcs shrouded the deep sky, illuminating everything in the city. The world seemed to become quiet for a moment. The vast lightning filled the world. In an instant, the boundless lightning condensed into a beam of light that penetrated the night sky. It was like a divine punishment above the ninth heaven. The extremely dazzling lightning suddenly expanded and smashed directly into the center of the snack bar. There was a loud bang. The entire street was shaking violently, and the originally brightly lit snack bar was completely pulverized in an instant. Countless lightning bolts spread out with incredible aftershocks, destroying the street lamps and lifting up the streets. Dense cracks appeared on the huge buildings nearby, and they were on the verge of collapse. Everything happened in just 3 to 5 seconds. Jiang Xiu looked at the ruins of the snack bar. It was quiet and dead silent. Major General of Zhongzhou State? Jifeng Sword Training School? The Vatican? Wuji Palace? The Jiang family of South America? Were they going to kill the experts of the Jiang family? Maybe. They might have existed. But now everything was gone. Even the corpses had turned into powder and drifted with the dust of the ruins. The lightning that was constantly spreading quickly disappeared. The street was quiet again. Jiang Xiu opened his eyes wide and was dumbfounded. He finally remembered who the protector of His Majesty Sword Emperor was. The old patriarch of the Wu family in Shenzhou. Wu Di. Codename Punishment. Chapter 831. When he was woken up by the urgent ringing of the phone, he felt dizzy. The scenes in his dream and reality were mixed together, and he was in a daze. Chen Fongqing opened his eyes and let the phone ring. He couldn't come back to his senses for a while. He had been in a high position for many years and worked hard. He was as steady as a mountain at the top of the world. He had experienced all of these. As he grew older, he felt more powerless. The healthcare doctor had clearly explained his physical condition. His blood sugar was very low. Recently, he even had some symptoms of mental weakness. Chen Fongqing also wanted to pay attention to it, but when he was busy, how could he pay attention to it? The phone kept ringing. After the call was automatically hung up because no one answered, the other party immediately called again. Chen Fongqing shook his head fiercely and finally woke up from the confusion. He looked at his watch. It was 4:15 at night. It was less than 2 hours since he fell asleep. Chen Fongqing sat up shakily to find his phone. The person who could call his private phone at this time was definitely not an ordinary person. What they said was also not ordinary, so he couldn't be angry. The phone rang for a while. Then it rang again. Chen Fongqing frowned and suddenly felt a little uneasy. He took out his phone from his bag and looked at the phone number on the screen. His eyes changed and he instantly woke up. The phone was automatically hung up because no one answered. On the phone screen, there were already 9 calls from Li Huaqing. What happened? Chen Fongqing glanced outside. It was quiet outside the window. If something big happened, his secretary should wake him up as soon as possible. The phone rang again. Chen Fongqing frowned tightly, took a deep breath and calmly answered the phone. "President, it's me. Prime Minister, I'm on the way to Dragon Lake Park. Come here immediately. Let's meet at Qi's house." Li Huaqing's voice sounded directly on the phone, indifferent, calm, tough, and irresistible. In Chen Fongqing's impression, this seemed to be the first time that Li Huaqing spoke to him in such a tone. He nodded and just wanted to say something, but Li Huaqing had directly hung up the phone. Chen Fongqing's heart slightly sank. He vaguely guessed something. Dragon Lake Park. Old Qi. The location and the people were enough to provoke his sensitive nerves. Longhu Park was not a park, but a place where many incumbent and retired councillors and even retired directors of Zhongzhou State lived. The well-proportioned villas in the park represented a strong influence in Yuzhou, even the entire Zhongzhou state. As for Elder Qi and the Qi family, even though they had retired for many years, they were still considered the top family in Longhu Park. Elder Qi's full name was Qi Zhengdong. More than 20 years ago, he used to be the first deputy minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, the Minister of National Defense, and concurrently the Minister of Security. He was a leader who still had a strong influence in the Prince Group. It could even be said that he was one of the current flag figures of the Prince Group. The biggest thing the old man did a few years before his retirement was to secretly launch a big plan after the collapse of the Li family. Hibernation plan. The hibernation plan of the Wang family of Beihai. In the middle of the night, Li Huaqing asked him to go to the Qi family's house. There was no doubt that something had happened to North Sea again. Something happened again. There was no end to it. Chen Fangqing felt agitated. He really didn't understand the significance of the Wang family of Beihai to Zhongzhou State. Maybe it had made contributions before, but now it was all a mistake. It was a mess, and it was endless. It made trouble every 2 or 3 days. It was a tumor, a bully, and it didn't know what was good for it. Chen Fangqing gritted his teeth, put on his clothes, and asked someone to prepare the car. He didn't bring his secretary, but just took the driver to Longhu Park. The interior of Longhu Park was brightly lit. The president visited Longhu at night without hiding his whereabouts. At this time, many people in the park had already been alarmed. Even some counselors who were not well informed did not know what had happened until now. When Chen Fangqing's car was about to enter the gate of Longhu Park, a black Hongqi slowly drove out from the gate. One in and one out. The 2 cars tacitly stopped at the gate. Chen Fangqing opened the window, squinted, and kept his composure. The window of the Hongqi rolled down. Yi Dongxing waved from the back of the car with a smile, but his eyes were unusually cold. Prime Minister, what brings you to Longhu Park so late at night? This was a question that he already knew the answer to. Others might not know about what happened in Beihai, but it was impossible for Yi Dongxing not to know. He even knew the news earlier than Li Huaqing. It was more likely that Yi Dongxing already knew a lot of things before it happened. Chen Fangqing's mouth twitched, and he said with a faint smile, "It should be related to Beihai. Why, General Yi still doesn't know what happened." Beihai in North. See. Yi Dongxing repeated, smiled, and said faintly, "It's just a small matter in Beihai. I didn't expect the president and the prime minister to be alarmed. It seems that the 2 of you are very concerned about the matter in Beihai. General Yi thinks this is a small matter?" Chen Fangqing stared at Yi Dongxing's eyes. To be honest, he still didn't know what happened. This was obviously a bit abnormal. Elder Qi was the leader of the Prince Group, and he could be said to be the leader of the chess game in Beihai. But now that something happened in Beihai, he informed Li Huaqing, and he didn't inform him until now. This seemed to mean that Elder Qi was very dissatisfied with him. How could what happened in Beihai be a small matter for Elder Qi to show such an attitude? And if it was a small matter, how could Yi Dongxing go out now? Looking at the direction of the driver's turn signal, that road was obviously going to the army headquarters. The people who should die are dead, and the world is at peace. There are no people who always want to kill innocent people. Such people deserve to die the most. Yi Dongxing looked into Chen Fangqing's eyes without backing down. There was a flash of real killing intent in his eyes. Yi Dongxing never thought that Chen Fangqing dared to attack Wang Yuetong. This was not in line with the rules, and it was no longer a game. This was almost irrational. What kind of game was this? Chen Fangqing's move completely put the Wang family of Beihai in the position of the enemy. Was Beihai province the enemy of Zhongzhou State? No one dared to say this. Li Huaqing dared not say it. No one dared to say it. Yi Dongxing doted on Wang Yuetong very much. He and Wang Tianzong could be said to be life and death friends. When Wang Yuetong and Wang Shengxiao were young, Beihai experienced a very delicate period. During those years, the brother and sister were lodged in Yi Dongxing's home. He did not dare to show too much love to Wang Shengxiao. After all, Yi Dongxing knew what kind of responsibility the little boy would bear in the future. But for Wang Yuetong, Yi Dongxing completely doted on her as his own daughter and was obedient to her. Otherwise, Wang Xingxiao would not have visited the Yi family in Yuzhou as soon as he learned that Wang Yuetong had left Beihai more than a year ago. Because in Wang Yuetong's heart, the Yi family could be said to be her second home. Now, in Yi Dongxing's mind, Chen Fangqing's so-called termination plan almost meant that Chen Fangqing wanted to kill his daughter. No matter how gentle and generous he was, he could not turn a blind eye to it. What do you mean, General Yi? Chen Fangqing subconsciously avoided Yi Dongxing's eyes and said in a low voice, "You don't understand?" Yi Dongxing laughed. His smile was a little weird. In the dark night, his face, which was illuminated by the light, looked extremely domineering and ferocious. "If you don't understand, think about it yourself." As he spoke, he raised the window. When the window was about to close, Chen Fangqing vaguely heard Yi Dongxing murmur to himself, "I gave you face, but you don't want it." Chen Fangqing's facial muscles suddenly twitched for a moment, and his face turned livid. Yi Dongxing did not show any courtesy. The window was closed, and the red flag directly flew away. Chen Fangqing was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "Let's go." In the eyes of countless people, the Prime Minister's car slowly stopped in front of building number 11 in Longhu Park. Li Huaqing's car was already parked at the door. The housekeeper of building number 11 immediately welcomed Chen Fangqing in. "Prime Minister, the President and Senior Qi are in the study," the housekeeper whispered. Chen Fangqing smiled and said thank you. Without leading the way, he walked to the study with familiarity. The door of the study was unlocked, and it was quiet inside. Chen Fangqing hesitated and pushed open the door of the study. A thick cloud of pungent smoke drifted over. Chen Fangqing's mind was blank for a moment. He slowed down his breathing and walked into the study. The light in the study was on. Li Huaqing and an old man who was old but still burly were sitting on the sofa, smoking silently. "President, Senior Qi." Chen Fangqing sat down on the sofa, and there was a look of inquiry in his eyes. "What's going on? Then I should ask you." Li Huaqing suppressed his anger, and his calm tone was more like a low roar. "Prime Minister, what have you been doing in North Sea recently?" "What do you mean?" Chen Fangqing raised his eyebrows. "I've said it before, I've told you again and again, let nature take its course in North Sea. We've done what we should do, and there's no need to do anything else. Wang Qinglei has arrived in Italos, and his action is considered smooth. That's good, and there's no need to do anything else. But what about you? Prime Minister, tell me, what is the termination plan?" Li Huaqing suddenly stood up and paced left and right in the study. His tone was a little exasperated. Chen Fangqing's hand holding the teacup suddenly trembled, and he narrowed his eyes. The termination plan was exposed? Why was it exposed? Our people. He put down the teacup. Were our people exposed in North Sea? Exposed? I was about to be uprooted. Overnight, we lost 4 major generals. For senior colonels, and lieutenant colonels lost nearly 30 people. Because of your termination plan, they are all dead, all killed. We lost 1/3 of our pawns in Zhongzhou state at once, and the major forces also suffered heavy losses. Wang Xingxiao has issued an order that anyone who enters the border of North Sea without permission will die, whether they are agents of Zhongzhou state or others. The Wang family of Beihai is killing people. Bastard! Chen Fangqing's body suddenly shook, and he flew into a rage. He slapped the tea table hard, and his anger soared to the sky. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He rebelled. North Sea is the territory of Zhongzhou state. For Zhongzhou state, there is no border. Who gave him the guts to kill 4 major generals just like that? Lawless, what does he want to do? What does Mount Dibbing want to do? Does he really think that Zhongzhou state doesn't dare to destroy them? Destroy them? How? Li Huaqing glanced at him coldly. Tell me, why do we want to destroy Mount Dibbing? Tell me, why do we want to kill Wang Yuetong? Chen Fangqing's momentum suddenly stagnated, and he couldn't speak for a while. He finally understood why Elder Qi was dissatisfied with him. For major generals, dozens of colonels, countless pawns, and men of sacrifice, they were all killed in one night. Zhongzhou state's painstaking efforts for more than 20 years suddenly suffered an unprecedented heavy loss. And this was exactly what happened after he visited Elder Chi not long ago, and got the highest command authority. He thought that the termination plan was right. But he didn't expect that the termination plan would be exposed so quickly. He didn't expect that Wang Shengxiao would really dare to kill people. For major generals, the other party was undoubtedly declaring war. Chen Fengqing's eyes were red. At this moment, there was only one thought left in his mind. The Wang family of Beihai deserved to die. Mount Dibing deserved to die. I led them for more than 20 years. I was the one who proposed the hibernation plan. I asked them to lurk in Beihai, wait for the cold winter to pass, wait for spring to bloom, wait for them to wake up. Elder Chi's deep voice was unhurried as he thought. They do wake up now, but after they wake up, how can it be spring? It's simply sure hell. The termination plan, this plan is too much. Chen Fengqing's face suddenly twitched. His heart was bleeding, but he gritted his teeth. The termination plan is necessary. Life and death politics has always been the most dangerous and the craziest. Things haven't come to that point, so why do we have to go to extremes? You kill Wang Yuetong today, and you dare to kill Wang Shengxiao tomorrow. Mount Dibing is gone, and Beihai province is fragmented. What's the point for us? Since more than 20 years ago, the hibernation plan has been very clear. Mount Dibing needs to be weakened, and Beihai can be turbulent, but Mount Dibing can't disappear in a short time. What we want is an obedient Wang family of Beihai, not a complete annihilation of the Wang family of Beihai. Prime Minister, your means are too fierce, and the new patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai is too young. Major General? It's nothing to kill a Major General. If you continue like this, once he sees that you want to destroy the Wang family of Beihai, he will even dare to kill you. For people in a desperate situation, there is never a need to think about destroying indiscriminately. Elder Chi said with a wry smile. If it really comes to that, he can just press a button, and the entire Beihai and the northeast of Zhongzhou state will become ruins. In that case, even if the Wang family of Beihai is gone, we will still lose, completely lose. There's no need to continue. Li Huaqing shook his head. The termination plan is aimed at Wang Yuetong. She is Wang Shengxiao's sister. Even if she left Mount Dibing, she is still a core member of Mount Dibing. The Prime Minister's approach has made Wang Shengxiao lose hope. He killed 4 major generals, not as a warning, but as a declaration of war. He took a deep breath, clenched his fists tightly, and suppressed his inner irritation. A real declaration of war, either you or I die. He doesn't want to go back. Prime Minister, are you satisfied with this result? Chen Fengqing's face was gloomy. This time, the reaction of the Wang family of Beihai was too fierce. The actual significance of this matter was even more significant than Wang Shengxiao's posture of not hesitating to fight. Because at that time, everything was just an attitude. Tonight, the 4 major generals and countless elites were talking about the action of the Wang family of Beihai. There was no turning back. Mount Dibing had no intention of turning back. They would not stop until one of them died. It's too late, Li Huaqing said quietly. It's too late to say anything now. Prime Minister, things have come to this point. What else do you want to say? Chen Fengqing, whose face was a little pale, moved the corners of his mouth and was about to speak. A cell phone beep suddenly rang. He silently took out his cell phone. The lock cell phone screen lit up, and there was a text message on it. Chen Fengqing's pupils suddenly contracted. He stared at the text message and remained silent. That was a text message from Wang Shengxiao. There were only 8 words. But in Chen Fengqing's eyes, they were like lightning, thunder, and bloody rain. There's no turning back. Bring it on. Chapter 832. Chen Fengqing looked at the phone in silence. His body was as stiff as a lifeless statue. There was no turning back. Bring it on. Between the lines, Chen Fengqing really saw the color of blood, and saw countless tragic endings. He held his breath, and his face turned blue for a moment. What's wrong? Li Huaqing noticed that something was wrong with his face, so he frowned and asked. He really didn't like Chen Fengqing now. In the past many years, although they had different positions, they were in harmony on the big issues and put the interests of Zhongzhou state first. Chen Fangqing's means might be a little fierce, but in the depths of his soul, there was indeed selflessness. Otherwise, he couldn't have developed the academics to such a scale in the face of a powerful prime minister supported by the whole prince group. Li Huaqing had always thought that Chen Fangqing was a terrible person, but also a trustworthy person. He could be said to be his best partner. But what happened tonight made Li Huaqing realize for the first time that Chen Fangqing was a bad teammate. To be honest, the termination plan was indeed fierce and against Li Huaqing's original intention, but he didn't think Li Huaqing was wrong. Wang Yuetong was now the key between Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao. If Wang Yuetong could be killed and the evidence destroyed, the possibility of cooperation between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai would be greatly reduced. Even if Li Tianlan insisted on taking the independent road of the Wang family of Beihai, without Wang Yuetong as a buffer, even if they cooperated this time, there would be greater conflicts in the future, which would give Zhongzhou state an opportunity. Wang Yuetong's death was indeed good for the overall situation of Zhongzhou state. But the last thing Chen Fangqing should do was expose the termination plan and let the Wang family of Beihai know about it. In some things, if he succeeded, he would be a hero, and if he failed, he would be a sinner. There was nothing to say. Chen Fangqing silently put the phone on the tea table and still didn't speak. The screen of the phone was on with a slightly dazzling light. Li Huaqing took the phone and glanced at it. His eyes narrowed. He deliberately took out his phone and glanced at it. His phone was quiet, and there was no message. And the text message Chen Fangqing received was right there. It was just a few words, but with a sense of danger. Li Huaqing could not see the slightest possibility of compromise or retreat from these short words. Li Huaqing felt cold all over. He subconsciously sat on the sofa and tightened his clothes. Wang Shengxiao. He really did not intend to turn back. They would fight to the death. What do you think? Li Huaqing glanced at Chen Fangqing and suddenly asked, lighting up a cigarette. Chen Fangqing took a deep breath and calmly said, he won't turn back, but do I have a choice? This could have never happened, or rather, there should have been a gentler way to solve it, not. What about time? Chen Fangqing directly interrupted Li Huaqing's words. There is a gentler way, but it requires time. Do we have time? We didn't. I am not referring only to the question of our term of office, but also to the south. Emperor Dong's palace is growing, and they have now begun to cooperate. The Wang family of Beihai does not agree with us to attack Emperor Dong's palace, and Emperor Dong's palace does not agree with us to attack the Wang family of Beihai, because this is the foundation of their foothold. We can spend a lot of time to slowly weaken the Wang family of Beihai by so-called gentle means. What about Emperor Dong's palace? The speed of Emperor Dong's palace's development will definitely be faster than the speed of weakening the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai will still exist, and Emperor Dong's palace will become another behemoth. Time. We don't have time. Chen Fangqing's tone was a little agitated. What about now? Li Huaqing said coldly. The current situation is even worse. Have you thought about the consequences if we completely turn against each other? What you said may make sense, but it doesn't mean that what you are doing now is right. We have no choice. Chen Fangqing said blandly. Ha! Li Huaqing was so angry that he laughed. Is this the so-called shirking of responsibility? You can make wrong decisions when you have no choice? You can make excuses for everything when you have no choice? Your termination plan is to kill Wang Yuetong, Wang Shengxiao's sister, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. If the Wang family of Beihai can't even protect such a person, what's the need for it to exist? Now your plan has been exposed. Wang Yuetong has not been found, and Mount Dibbing has gone crazy. They are killing people now. They are not enemies but our people. For major generals, and that's not all. One day they will kill all the people we left in Beihai, not only them but also their families, relatives and friends. Friend, no one will survive. This is not a fucking game. This is revenge. Revenge, do you understand? If it weren't for your termination plan, how could things have developed to this extent? You have no choice. Well, tell me now, what should we do if the Wang family of Beihai wants a life and death struggle? Tell me, what should we do? Is there a war? Planes, tanks, Army's nuclear bombs? Is that right? I'm not shirking my responsibility. Chen Fongqing stood up and looked out of the window. The deep night was about to pass, and a hazy light appeared on the horizon. He was silent for a long time before he calmly said, "You asked me if there was a war." Yes. His expression was as hard as a rock. I want a war. This is a war between me and Wang Shengxiao. Do you know what you're talking about? Li Huaqing said in a low voice. I know very well. Wang Shengxiao also knows very well that this may be his last bit of reason. His war, his revenge, and his fight to the death are all aimed at me. Chen Fongqing narrowed his eyes. His declaration of war is also aimed at me. So, Li Huaqing asked expressionlessly. I don't shirk my responsibility, but since we have differences, there is no need to advance or retreat together in this matter. President, you use your gentle means, and I will choose to fight with the little guy from the Wang family of Beihai. He declared war on me. Can I run away? I have no choice but to accept the challenge. Li Huaqing suddenly raised his eyebrows. He wanted to say something, but in the end he remained silent. Chen Fongqing's words seemed to be in a fit of pique, but they were not unreasonable. Neither Zhongzhou State nor Beihai could afford the consequences of a war. Wang Shengxiao directly targeted Chen Fongqing for revenge. Chen Fongqing accepted the challenge. Whether he won or lost, for the overall situation of Zhongzhou State, this matter was still barely controllable. But what about Chen Fongqing himself? Have you thought about the consequences? Li Huaqing asked in a low voice. Chen Fongqing wanted to kill Wang Yuetong. If necessary, he would not be polite to Wang Shengxiao. If he won, the Wang family of Beihai would inevitably be destroyed, but the resources of Beihai province would still belong to Zhongzhou State. But what if he failed? Had he really thought about his end? Chen Fongqing was silent for a long time before he laughed at himself. It's not a matter of whether I think about the consequences or not. It's a matter of whether I have any other choice. If Wang Shengxiao wants to fight to the death, what can I do? Either he dies or I die. When the fight went beyond the scope of a game and evolved into a war, the end was so tragic. Chen Fongqing was sure that if he failed, he would be the most miserable prime minister since the founding of Zhongzhou State. Because his opponent this time was not an ordinary opponent, but a real behemoth that had been standing at the peak since the founding of the country. I still have about a year's time. This war must end within this time. Chen Fongqing said quietly. His tone was extremely firm and crazy. I should remind you, Li Huaqing said calmly. Maybe you have overlooked a very important point. Wang Yuetong is not only the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but also Li Tianlan's woman, the hostess of Emperor Dong's palace. Wang Shengxiao will not let you go. Li Tianlan's character will only be more intense than Wang Shengxiao's. Do you think he will let you go? This was also a very important question. Li Tianlan's character was even stronger than Wang Shengxiao's. If he knew that Chen Fongqing wanted to kill his woman, what would he do? Did he have a reason to renege on the promise he made to the council previously? Chen Fongqing wanted to face the Wang family of Beihai by himself, but in fact he would face the joint forces of Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. So he can't know about this. Chen Fongqing said calmly. At least in a short time he can't know. What do you want? Li Huaqing asked. Block the desert prison and cut off all their communication with the outside world. Anyone who dares to approach the prison will be killed. Chen Fongqing said in a gloomy tone. Li Huaqing didn't speak for a long time. He looked at Chen Fongqing's side face. After a long time he said slowly, You're really crazy. I can do that. Chen Fongqing said. The desert prison was within the scope of Beijiang of Zhongzhou State. Although there was a country in Beijiang, it was still the territory of the Prince Group in general. The Prince Group's position in Beijiang was deeply rooted. In terms of military and politics, it could be regarded as Chen Fongqing's confidant. It was not a gentleman who wanted to block the desert prison. You can do it, but how long can you block it? Li Huaqing asked. It won't take too long. I will speed up my actions in Beihai. When the matter in Beihai is over, Li Tianlan is nothing to worry about. Chen Fongqing said slowly. It's time for Kunlun City to contribute to this matter. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes, looked at Chen Fangqing, and then looked at Elder Qi. Elder Qi lowered his eyes and said nothing. He might have been dissatisfied with Chen Fangqing when he first received the news, but he would not openly fall out with him. At this time, even if he had something to say, he would not say it in front of Li Huaqing. Chen Fangqing's meaning was already very clear. In the face of the endless revenge of the Wang family of Beihai, Chen Fangqing alone had to bear all the responsibilities and play with the Wang family of Beihai to the end. Fight to the end. Li Huaqing said no more. He stood up, walked out of the study, and then left Dragon Lake Park. Chen Fangqing stood in front of the window, watching Li Huaqing's car getting farther and farther away. He stood quietly and said nothing. From this moment on, in the matter against the Wang family of Beihai, when things were irreversible, Li Huaqing stayed out of it, and Chen Fangqing became the main leader. The game had officially become a war. It was completely different from before. If he lost, he would bear all the responsibilities and all the bad consequences. If he won, no one could take any credit from him. Chen Fangqing slowly turned around, took out his mobile phone, and dialed Wang Qinglei's number. Chapter 833. The night sky was high in Italy in winter, and the air was cold. Wang Qinglei stood on the balcony of the top floor of the hotel, looking up at the night sky. Countless stars twinkled in the pure and deep sky, like pairs of eyes in the darkness. He stared at the starry sky. The starry sky seemed to be staring at him, just like the current dark world. The whole dark world was paying attention to his visit to Europe. He was also paying attention to the dark world silently. They were testing and observing each other. Car lights lit up downstairs of the hotel. A row of cars slowly drove out of the hotel and merged into the traffic of Chichio City. Standing in Wang Qinglei's position, whether he looked at the stars in the sky or the traffic on the ground, they were all so small and so dazzling. This should be the last test. Wang Qinglei squinted and looked at a bodyguard beside him. The bodyguard nodded silently. At the beginning of Wang Qinglei's visit, he was always by Wang Qinglei's side, wearing a black cloak that covered his whole body. No one knew his identity or his appearance, but Wang Qinglei gave him unimaginable trust, and was almost inseparable from him all day long. When Wang Qinglei was facing the heads of the major families in France, when he was having dinner with the Queen in England, and when he was meeting with Grand Duke Paul in Rothschild, he was always by Wang Qinglei's side. Other than that, Wang Qinglei did not bring a second bodyguard with him on this visit. This was enough to show the powerful strength of this bodyguard. The superpowers in the dark world who had been observing Wang Qinglei even thought that this black-cloaked man had the strength no less than that of an invincible realm expert. It's really annoying. Wang Qinglei lit a cigarette, recalled the trip in the past few days, and shook his head helplessly. The Vatican, the Jiang family of South America, Jifeng Sword Raining School, and Wuji Palace. Plus Wang Qinglei. This was equivalent to the cooperation between the four superpowers in Zhongzhou State, which involved the interests of Europe, America, East Island and Zhongzhou State. It was a big gamble to plot against Beihai. At present, the cooperation of several superpowers had begun, but all parties were still testing each other until the end. This could be said to be asking a tiger for its skin, but the huge benefits forced them to make the decision to cooperate. Wang Qinglei didn't dare to fully trust the four superpowers. The four superpowers didn't trust each other very much, and they didn't dare to fully trust Wang Qinglei. Cooperation, coordination, negotiation, discussion. The suspicions were slowly dispelled, and everyone worked together with sincerity to achieve the desired results. Over the past few days, Wang Qinglei had met many people. Most of them were the spokespersons and representatives of the four major organizations. The meeting was like a game. He showed his sincerity bit by bit, and was accepted by the other party. He went all the way to Italos in Seven Hill City. The next stop was the European Sanctuary in Chichio City. He would meet the real giants of the four forces there, and formally discuss how to launch a war against Mount Dibbing. There's no need to be dissatisfied. The more cautious they are, the more we look forward to it. This means that they really value this cooperation. The black-cloaked bodyguard said lightly. He took a step forward and stood side by side with Wang Qinglei on the balcony. He pulled down the cloak on his head. A handsome and peaceful young man's face appeared under the night sky. It was Wang Xiaoyao's face. It's not that I'm dissatisfied. It's just that I can't wait any longer. We don't have much time left. Before this, we were the ones testing them. Now it's them testing us. A lot of time has been wasted in testing each other. Wang Qinglei shook his head. The opportunity is fleeting. We're anxious and so are they. Wang Xiaoyao said lightly, for each other, we all have interests that we can't let go of. Wang Qinglei nodded. What Wang Xiaoyao said made sense. Only a few people knew that this was the so-called joint action of the four major organizations. On the surface, it seemed that the Vatican was leading. But in fact, all this had little to do with the Vatican. To be exact, the four major organizations were Knights Templars, the Jiang family of South America, and the two martial arts forces in East Island. And Knights Templars was no longer the Knights Templars of the Vatican. It was His Majesty's Knights Templars. Once North Sea changed, His Majesty wanted everything that North Sea had in Europe, including Rothschild. With his strength, after absorbing everything, he would be able to become a behemoth that could compete with the Vatican in Europe and truly stand at the top of the world. And what the Jiang family of South America needed was His Majesty's ally to help them sweep away all the obstacles in America, such as the Heroes Club, the Men in Black, the Fantasy World, and even Lin Fengting, the top expert in the Dark World. If they helped His Majesty fight against Beihai, His Majesty would naturally give them enough rewards in America in the future. Jifeng Sword Raining School and Wuji Palace wanted half of Beihai, or the whole Kunlun city. Half of Beihai belonged to East Island hundreds of years ago. If they could take it back, in their view, it would be the unification of East Island's territory. Even if they couldn't take half of Beihai, taking Kunlun city and controlling the dark power of Zhongzhou state was also a great temptation for them. In the final battle of Heaven Capital more than 3 years ago, Zhongzhou state used all its power to plot against East Island, which finally benefited the purgatory of Heaven Capital. Now East Island also wanted to plot against Zhongzhou state with all its power. And Wang Qinglei and Wang Xiaoyao wanted Mount Dibing. They were all big interests. Interests that were so big that no one could give up. So no one would leave this war. It was bound to be a life-and-death battle. After paying so much, of course, they had to be cautious. The one who just left has a high position in Knights Templars. He should be reporting to His Majesty now. If there is no accident, there should be a result tonight. Wang Qinglei said. Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and said thoughtfully, what is the so-called His Majesty? Wang Qinglei's eyes flickered. He was obviously very curious about the identity of His Majesty, but he had no clue. I don't know. I've asked someone to check, but I can't find anything. This man is scheming and shrewd, and he has a big plan. When his identity is exposed, no one can stop him. Wang Xiaoyao sneered. Before he could speak, an incomparably soft light suddenly filled the night sky. A large area of Chichio City was completely illuminated in an instant. The light kept spreading, almost covering the whole Chichio City. Wang Qinglei turned his head and looked at the direction of the light with a playful expression. Is that the Holy Land? Wang Xiaoyao looked at the light and asked. Yes. Wang Qinglei said. It's also a welcome ceremony. The holy light comes, and the trial begins. This group of charlatans pay attention to everything they do. Oh, let's go. Wang Xiaoyao turned and walked out of the balcony. Wang Qinglei took out his mobile phone to prepare the car. Tonight would be the last night of his visit to Europe. The final place was number 2 Angel Street in the Holy Land. A place that was not marked in Chichio City. There was a place that made the heretics all over the world pale. The Vatican's tribunal. The Knights Templars initiated the trial of Beihai province in the name of the Vatican. And the final place of the negotiation was the famous Holy Court Conference Room in the Vatican's tribunal. This conference, at first, was called the Trial Conference. The soft and pure light dispersed the night and spread like water. In the dim and strong light, Wang Qinglei's car slowly drove into the Holy Land and finally stopped in front of the tribunal. The light here became brighter and brighter. Even if there were onlookers, no one could see who came here. Surrounded by the light, Wang Qinglei and Wang Xiaoyao walked into the tribunal and into the room. They walked into the Holy Court conference room filled with darkness and scarlet tones. The conference room was very big, but there were very few people inside. Tianhai Wuji, the palace master of Wuji Palace, casually sat on the side with the left and right visiting professors of Wuji Palace. Opposite him was Yagyu Kurasumi, the master of Jifeng Sword Raining School, and the 2 deputy masters of Jifeng Sword Raining School. Above the 2 of them, Moraid, the current Grand Knight of Knights Templars, sat with a smile. When he saw Wang Qinglei come in, he stood up and made a gesture for him to sit down. Wang Xiaoyao, who had put on the black cloak again, looked up and quietly observed the murals in the conference room. The murals were vivid. In front of him, an angel with broken wings pierced the heart of the devil with a holy sword. The murals were surrounded by a dark red color, like blood. Wang Xiaoyao looked at the scene in front of him, and was a little fascinated. Wang Qinglei calmly sat at the conference table and said in a deep voice, "Where is His Majesty?" His Majesty has a little disagreement with the Jiang family of South America. He is solving this matter and will come soon. Moraid smiled apologetically. He asked me to apologize to you on his behalf. The 2 invincible realm grandmasters of East Island and Wang Qinglei frowned at the same time. At this time, His Majesty had a disagreement with the Jiang family of South America? What kind of disagreement? The newly advanced invincible realm expert, Jiang Guoqiu, seemed to have been very respectful of His Majesty. What on earth happened to make them disagree? Don't worry, it's just a little misunderstanding with the Jiang family of South America. It can be easily explained. I can guarantee that this little thing will not change our plan. Even if there is a change, it's good, Moraid said with a smile. Wang Qinglei nodded and said calmly, "Anyway, I hope it's done as soon as possible." Of course. Before Moraid could speak, a voice rang out from outside the conference room. There was a hint of laughter in the voice, and there seemed to be endless confidence in it. All of us hope for it to happen as soon as possible. In fact, now that things have developed to this point, there is no longer anything that can stop us. We are sitting here today to discuss our sincerity and determination, and nothing else, isn't that right? Everyone turned their heads at the same time. In their sight, the door of the conference room was still full of light. A figure came in the rich and soft light. Behind him, there was a tall and straight figure. Out of respect, everyone stood up and nodded to His Majesty, who was the last to enter. "Everyone, please." His Majesty's voice was full of laughter. He did not hide his true face, but a hazy halo covered his whole body, like clouds and starlight. Even the several invincible realm experts who were sitting could not see through His Majesty's face. He waved his hand and motioned for everyone to sit down. When he passed by Wang Xiaoyao, he paused, looked at him seriously and said with a smile, "I'm impolite. Your Highness, please sit down." "How did you know it was me?" Wang Xiaoyao slowly turned around and took off his cloak. His Majesty looked at Wang Xiaoyao, smiled and said nothing. His Majesty looked at Wang Xiaoyao, smiled and said nothing. The tall figure who came in behind him moved a chair and put it beside Wang Xiaoyao. Everyone's pupils contracted for a moment. What does this mean? Wang Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and did not look at the chair. He looked at the man who moved the chair. The patriarch of the Jiang family of South America. The new invincible realm expert in the dark world, Jiang Guoqiu. That's what I mean. His Majesty smiled faintly, found a place to sit down and said calmly, "Make a formal announcement to everyone." Chapter 834. There was silence in the conference room. One could even say that it was dead silent. Everyone was looking at the mysterious His Majesty. They were looking at Jiang Guoqiu next to His Majesty. Everyone's heart was full of absurd emotions. Jiang Guoqiu, the 4th follower. Everyone had a feeling that the wind was too strong for them to hear clearly. His Majesty now only had 4 followers. The first follower, Moraid, used to be the second commander of the Holy Disarmament Corps, and now the Grand Knight of Knights Templars. The second follower was famous in Zhongzhou State. White Tiger, one of the 4 spirit generals, died in the chaos of Eastern Europe. The third follower was Yagyu Kurasumi, the leader of Jifeng Sword Raining School. The purgatory of Heaven Capital was now guarding Heaven Capital. Compared with 3 years ago when the purgatory of Heaven Capital first appeared, its strength was not as good as before. Yagyu Kurasumi had truly stabilized his position as a great grandmaster in East Island. And now, His Majesty's fourth follower, the patriarch of the Jiang family of South America, Jiang Guochu, Europe, East Island, America. 3 regions, 3 followers. At this moment, even though everyone present was His Majesty's collaborator, everyone still felt palpitations in their hearts. Although in general, there was not a strong relationship between His Majesty and his followers, and they were cooperating with each other, many relationships never paid attention to nominal subordination. The most important thing was whether the relationship between the 2 parties was solid. His Majesty would not restrain his followers too much. For example, Yagyu Kurasumi was the 3rd follower, but Jifeng Sword Raining School was still an absolutely autonomous force. Perhaps the only exception was Moraid, but His Majesty had never asked him to do anything. Moraid was willing to be a loyal dog at His Majesty's feet, and it was entirely his voluntary behavior. But as a follower, he also had responsibilities to bear. His Highnesses could also influence their forces through followers and use their strength. This was like cooperation, but also like a transaction, very equal. It sounded simple, but in fact, it was not easy at all. When a superior faced his subordinates, he considered ruling and ensuring their loyalty and position. When His Majesty faced his followers, he considered how to maintain their long-term and stable relationship. If this was a transaction, then the most important thing was whether what the 2 sides gave each other was equal. This was also the core secret between His Majesty and his followers. No one knew what His Majesty would give him after he became His Majesty's disciple. Nor did anyone know that His Majesty had given Mordesh. What was that? But as long as the disciples believed that what His Majesty had given them was worth the price, such transactions and cooperation would never go wrong. And this kind of relationship would also be more easily accepted by various countries. The royal family of East Island had never expressed any opinion on the master of Jifeng Sword Raining School becoming His Majesty's follower. Now Jiang Guochu had also become His Majesty's disciple. What His Majesty gave Jiang Guochu was no longer important. Since he was willing to be a follower, it proved that he could not refuse what His Majesty was giving him. Being unable to refuse also meant that this kind of cooperation was unbreakable, at least in the short term. It was no longer a matter of His Majesty having one more follower. With the addition of Jiang Guochu, His Majesty, Knights Templars, and Jifeng Sword Raining School had one more reliable ally. And the Jiang family of South America also had the help of His Majesty, Knights Templars, and Jifeng Sword Raining School. His Majesty had another ally by his side. This was a good thing for everyone in the alliance. Tianhai Wuji lowered his head and took a sip of tea, his eyes twinkling. He was not His Majesty's follower. Now seeing this scene, he had begun to subconsciously consider the next situation of Wuji Palace. Wang Qinglei looked at His Majesty, then at Jiang Guochu, and finally kept silent. He was a counselor of Zhongzhou State, and he would even strive for the presidency of Zhongzhou State in the future. It was impossible for him to become His Majesty's follower. Wang Xiaoyao also had his own pride, and it was also impossible for him to appear as a follower. Now seeing Jiang Guochu actually standing behind His Majesty, the 2 of them had mixed feelings. They looked at each other and didn't speak. The feeling of helplessly watching a strong competitor rise was not a good one. But fortunately, for now, Jiang Guochu becoming the 4th follower was more beneficial to the war of the Wang family of Beihai. What did he give you? Wang Xiaoyao glanced at Jiang Guochu and suddenly asked. Jiang Guochu sat next to His Majesty. Hearing this, he raised his eyes and glanced at Wang Xiaoyao, then said blandly, the future. There were many possibilities in the future, so the answer was extremely vague. Wang Xiaoyao shrugged and took a deep look at him, speechless. Jiang Guochu's expression was calm and peaceful. What His Majesty gave him was indeed the future. His future and the future of the Jiang family of South America. Within 5 years, His Majesty promised to make him really close to the threshold of the peak of the invincible realm. And it could be foreseen that this alliance would not disappear at the moment. Jifeng Sword Raining School, The Jiang family of South America, Knights Templars, this was just the beginning. It already looked extremely beautiful. There would be more people, more forces joining this alliance. There was no rule here. There were only interests and mutual cooperation. Interests were the eternal theme. Perhaps one day in the future, this alliance would disband because of internal strife. But with His Majesty, these days would not come. As for the further future, at that time, no matter what the alliance did, the Jiang family of South America would get enough interests and would not lose anything. The name of a follower sounded unpleasant, but compared to interests, these were not worth mentioning. Congratulations, Your Majesty. A hoarse voice with a thick Nordic accent rang out. The already gloomy atmosphere in the conference room seemed to darken even more. The hoarse voice echoed slightly and silently. A foot stepped on the ground in front of everyone, followed by a man in black standing in front of the desk. Wang Xiaoyao suddenly felt that the man's dress was a little familiar. The black cloak covered the whole body. He could not see the face, figure, or even whether the person was a man or a woman. He looked down at himself. He found that the two of them dressed almost the same. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he narrowed his eyes. Ju. King Xiaorao. Nice to meet you. Hello. In the black cloak, the hoarse voice laughed in a low voice. If there are any hidden experts in the Wang family of Beihai, you can tell me. I can kill them in advance. You can kill as many people as you want in Mount Dibbing, including Wang Shengxiao. How do you want him to die? Wang Xiaoyao gently raised the corners of his mouth. He glanced around with a faint smile. That's a little interesting. Among all of you, Ju's combat capability may not be the strongest, but when it comes to killing people, no one can compare with him, including me. His Majesty whispered. No one denied that. He was the only invincible realm killer who was still in the peak state. He was cruel, cold, ruthless, and cunning. He had evolved the peak assassination skills to the extreme. Standing here, he represented the highest level of all the killers in the dark world in this era. His Majesty Morade Wang Xiaorao, Yagyu Kurumi, Tianhai Wuji Ju and Jiang Guoqiu. 7 invincible realm experts. This was the strongest lineup they had when waging war against Beihai. It was also the greatest confidence for them in Zhongzhou State. In the case that more than half of the invincible realm experts in the dark world had withered, the 7 of them represented the supreme of the dark world. Let's get started. His Majesty reached out and knocked on the conference table, then said in a soft voice. Chapter 835. There was no courtesy or concealment in the meeting in the name of trial. Before the war broke out, this was the last coordination between the top leaders of several superpowers. They had all proved their sincerity before. Now they were discussing the ultimate power to join the war. The first batch of lurkers from Knights Templars is already in place. 4 Grand Knights have secretly arranged it. Within 3 days, the second batch of elites will sneak into the city of Floating Island. There are 3 experts at the peak of the Thunder-Shocking Realm, 9 in the Thunder-Shocking Realm, 70 in the Fire-Flaming Realm, and more than 100 in the Ice-Condensing Realm. We have contacted the intelligence personnel of Zhongzhou State and exchanged some information to a certain extent. After the war breaks out, within 3 hours, Floating Island will fall into a state of chaos. In the most urgent time, we can at least hold off the 20,000 garrison troops of Floating Island City for more than 5 hours. Morade's voice was calm and confident, which was proportional to the power he showed. Floating Island in North Sea was the territory of the Tang family. The 7 sword-holding families were all wealthy families with deep roots. There might be strong and weak ones, but none of them were easy to deal with. With the garrison troops of the Beihai Corps stationed in each city, it was no exaggeration to say that no matter which city they attacked, it would be a real hard battle. The so-called state of chaos referred to the paralysis of some core urban functions of Floating Island in the shortest time, such as traffic, communication signals, and command systems, causing chaos from top to bottom in the whole city. The elites of Knights Templars had prepared everything in Floating Island City. As long as the war broke out, from causing chaos to holding off the garrison troops and retreating, they could at least prevent Floating Island City from helping Mount Dibbing for 12 hours. 12 hours didn't sound long, But in a war that was racing against time, 12 hours was enough to decide everything. Jifeng Sword Reigning School and Wuji Palace have joined forces to arrange in Kanglan City. The first batch is already in place, and the second batch of elites will arrive before the war. We are preparing to contact the intelligence personnel of Zhongzhou State. Tianhai Wuji, the palace master of Wuji Palace, touched the broken beard at the corner of his mouth and looked at his watch. He said slowly, "At this time they should have already started to contact. Is Kanglan City so important?" In the black cloak, Zhu raised his head and glanced at Tianhai Wuji. He tooted and said, "Kanglan City is just a small city. You want the two major martial arts sects of East Island to join forces? Is your ability too weak? Or is the Jiang family of Kanglan too strong? I heard that the Heaven Saber has been killed by Li Tianlan. What are you worried about? The Kanglan Jiang clan is loyal, brave and fearless. Even without Heaven Blade, the Jiang clan is still the Jiang clan. No one can say that they are weak. As for us," Yagyu Kureisen, the master of Jifeng Sword Reigning School, twitched the corner of his mouth. "Of course, we're not weak. In this war, we've invested 11 superiors of the half-step invincible realm, more than 30 superiors of the thunder-shocking realm, nearly 100 superiors of the thunder-shocking realm, nearly 800 superiors of the fire-flaming realm, and nearly 3,000 superiors below the fire-flaming realm. Absolutely. Do you think Jifeng Sword Reigning School and Wuji Palace are weak with such a lineup?" There was dead silence in the conference room. The atmosphere seemed to be even stiffer than when His Majesty had announced that the fourth pupil was Jiang Guochu. Everyone cursed in their hearts. 11 half-step invincible realm experts. There were more than 30 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. There were nearly 100 thunder-shocking realm experts. Nearly 1,000 fire-flaming realm experts. 3,000 elites below the fire-flaming realm. What kind of power is this? This was simply a real army. Judging from the strength on paper, neither the world-famous Border Control Corps of Zhongzhou State, nor the immovable Beihai Corps were as powerful as this one. It could even be said that the army was far inferior. It was impossible for Jifeng Sword Reigning School and Wuji Palace to come up with such power. Even if their strength was doubled, they couldn't come up with such a power. Throughout the entire Dark World, only the superpowers like Zhongzhou State and Star State could come up with such a lineup. Superpowers? Maybe only the Wang family of Beihai could have such a terrifying lineup. The strength of the entire East Island is roughly like this. Zhu, whose face was stiff, murmured to himself. Suddenly he froze. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Tianhai Wuji and Yagyu Kureisen. The two grandmasters of East Island didn't say anything. They just looked at him quietly. This is the strength of the entire East Island? He took a deep breath and asked slowly. East Island is ours. It belongs to His Majesty the Mikado. Is there a problem? Tianhai Wuji said calmly. When he spoke, he glanced at His Majesty intentionally or unintentionally. His Majesty sat in a cloud of starlight and didn't seem to respond. Everyone could feel his gentleness and smile. He didn't speak. He had nothing to say. More than 4 years ago, Zhongzhou State conspired against East Island with all its power. More than 4 years later, East Island conspired against Beihai with all its power. Tianhai Wuji pursed his lips, and his eyes looked a little savage. It was indeed the power of a whole country. East Island had already suffered a great loss in the final battle of Heaven Capital. As the purgatory of Heaven Capital moved further and further away from them, East Island became weaker and weaker. His Majesty's will was passed to His Majesty the Mikado through Jifeng Sword. Without any hesitation, the Mikado directly made this seemingly crazy decision. This lineup was almost more than 80% of the existing strength of East Island, and the battlefront they were responsible for was naturally more than one city. It was Kanglan, Tongtian and Qiushui. 3 cities and 80,000 square kilometers of land. That was the territory that the Wang family of Beihai took away from East Island hundreds of years ago. With this island, which had always been called North Island and East Island, the territory of Beihai doubled. And now there was a beautiful land of 160,000 square kilometers. Everyone in East Island could never forget the humiliation that the last Mikado suffered in Beihai when he visited the Wang family of Beihai and tried to take back this territory. And now the opportunity was here. People in East Island didn't need to smile apologetically anymore, and they didn't need to bow down anymore. If you don't give it to me, I will take it. I don't care if there are corpses everywhere and blood flows like rivers. And this action also had a code name in East Island, which was return. Let the land that belonged to East Island return. From the very beginning, East Island regarded this action as a war. A real, highest-level war. Kanglan, Tongtian, and Chiushui, half of Beihai province, will become our war zone. The combat teams and fleets of Jifeng Sword Raining School and Wuji Palace will be on standby at any time. We won't detonate the so-called chaos. Or rather, we won't just do that. The three so-called sword-holding families, the Jiang family of Kanglan, the Chun clan of Tongtian, and Huangfu of Chiushui, will completely disappear and be destroyed in this war. We can promise you that no matter how long the war lasts, no one from the three cities south of Kanglan River will go to support Mount Dibing. Yagyu Kurumi's voice was clear and firm. His expression was serious and solemn. Wu Ju curled his lips and fell completely silent. The combat teams and fleets of Jifeng Sword Raining School and Wuji Palace? T. Jifeng Sword Raining School and Wuji Palace didn't have any combat teams and fleets. Combat teams were the standard configuration of the various superpowers. They were also the core combatants of the various superpowers and the strongest aerial forces. Combat teams generally consisted of the world's first-rate fighters, some even super first-rate fighters, such as helicopters, transport planes and reconnaissance planes, to form a large-scale combat team. Whether it was Jifeng Sword Raining School or Wuji Palace, they weren't superpowers. They couldn't afford it at all. They could afford it if they gritted their teeth, but they couldn't afford daily maintenance, combat personnel, fleet command, private air routes, and training. The fleet was even more exaggerated. It was a navy on the right track. Among the superpowers in the Dark World, only the Wang family of Beihai had its own fleet. Nominally, it still belonged to the Beihai Corps and Zhongzhou State. The so-called fleet and combat teams were obviously the power of East Island. In this action, East Island was totally going to seize this opportunity to stake everything on one throw. We are foreign aid, and most of us are active in Queen City. All of you here are friends of the Jiang family of South America, and the Jiang family of South America will not be stingy with its feathers. Our three superiors of the half-step invincible realm are already in Queen City, and the second batch of elites will soon enter Beihai. There are nearly 800 people in total, and they are all elites. We can also make Queen City unable to support Mount Dibing in a short time. Jiang Guochu smiled and said in a gentle voice, I have few people, not as many as you. His Majesty can arrange it. Wu Ju shrugged. The so-called rising invincible realm expert was also a killer. Although he was also building his own team, his foundation was inevitably less than that of the people present. His Majesty nodded and looked at Wang Qinglei. Don't worry about Lioli City. Even if the strength is insufficient, His Majesty Wang Xiaoyao can directly control the patriarch of the Yi family as soon as it happens. As for Shengzhou City, Zhongzhou State will do its best to clear the obstacles for you. Wang Qinglei's voice was calm. His Majesty nodded and looked very satisfied. There were only 3 groups of people attacking Beihai. The first group went into Beihai to lurk. The second group was the support force of the first group of elites, and it would also be the main force to detonate the chaos. And the third group, His Majesty Moray Jiangguochu, Wang Xiaoyao, Yagyu Kurumi, Tianhai Wuji, and Wuju were all in the third group. They would take a small number of elites and rush directly to Mount Dibing. This was the strongest force, and Mount Dibing would also be the final battlefield. It was expected that in 8 hours, the entire Beihai would be turned upside down. Your Highness, do you have anything else to add? His Majesty glanced at Wang Xiaoyao and suddenly asked with a smile. No. Wang Xiaoyao said blandly. This is already very good. He stared at the table in front of him, a little absent-minded. He thought of the raging force that was about to rush into Beihai. He suddenly thought of his big brother, who would stand in front of him no matter what danger there was when he was a child. Sword Emperor. Thinking of that figure. Beihai thinking of that land. He Wang Xiaoyao took a deep breath, and his eyes suddenly became extremely cruel and cold. Chapter 836. His Majesty looked at Wang Xiaorao seriously, and didn't speak for a while. In the clouds and starlight, he sat there, and his aura was calm and deep. Wang Xiaorao seemed to know what he wanted to say. He sorted out his thoughts and said blandly, "When the time comes, my people will automatically cooperate with you. There's no need to say more. Compared with you, I don't have many people, but whether it's ability, loyalty, or position, they can play a great role. You need me to sneak in, and you also need me to retreat." His Majesty nodded and said softly, "It's best if Your Highness is willing to do your best. I have no way out." Wang Xiaoyao was expressionless. This could be said to be the biggest crisis of the Wang family of Beihai in the past 100 years, and he also became the biggest traitor in the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years. It was no exaggeration to say that the Wang family of Beihai also had chaos and purges in history, but as the lineal brother of the patriarch, Wang Xiaoyao was the first traitor in the history of the entire Wang family of Beihai. If he and Wang Qinglei succeeded in their plan, it would start a new era of the Wang family of Beihai. But if the plan failed, Wang Xiaoyao would definitely not have a good end. Not to mention what would happen to Wang Qinglei. It was a small matter that he was smashed to pieces. In the next decades or hundreds of years, he would even be spurned by the descendants of the Wang family of Beihai for many years. He really had no way out, so he had to go all out. His Majesty moved his body and seemed to be relieved. He smiled, looked at Wang Qinglei and asked, "Speaker, do you have anything to add?" Wang Qinglei was his partner, and many things that should be said had actually been said before the meeting. But now Wang Qinglei was sitting here, representing not only his partner, but also the attitude and will of the whole Zhongzhou state towards this war. East Island could attack Beihai with all its strength. The Vatican and the Jiang family of South America could also send out all their elites. Even if Zhongzhou state didn't send out a single soldier, Wang Qinglei was also qualified to sit here. Because Beihai still belonged to Zhongzhou state after all. What they needed most was the acquiescence of Zhongzhou state. What was more, what Zhongzhou state gave them was not only acquiescence but also considerable help. So even His Majesty respected Wang Qinglei very much. Before I came here, I had a detailed and in-depth communication with the Prime Minister. In principle, Zhongzhou state agrees to activate all the chess pieces hidden in Beihai and provide you with all the help, including intelligence, concealment, attack routes, assassination targets, and even direct participation in the battle and evacuation plans, as well as entry and exit routes. Wang Qinglei said calmly, "For this war, Zhongzhou state is very determined. We will give you great support, but we have only one request. Please go ahead." His Majesty said seriously. Everyone sat up straight, their faces solemn. Efficiency. Wang Qinglei's voice was crisp and cold. "We just need to be efficient and fast. The sooner, the better. It's even best to launch the war within 3 days. This matter has been delayed for a long time. Given the current political environment of Zhongzhou state, everyone's time is very tight. So the sooner, the better." 3 days, Tianhai Wuji was the first to frown. That's impossible. It was indeed impossible. Their first batch of elites had just finished the initial lurking. Although the second batch of elites had been selected, they had not yet entered Beihai province. This was also the fundamental goal of this meeting. To be exact, it was the handover of intelligence. Intelligence about Beihai. The Vatican, the Jiang family of South America, East Island, Zhongzhou state, Wang Xiaoyao and Zhu. All the intelligence about the Wang family of Beihai was handed over by all the superpowers. This was destined to be a very long and boring process. They had to make sure that every key chess pieces roll at the critical moment. And the way to deal with the failure of the chess pieces. They had to use each other's intelligence to make up for the shortcomings in their own reports, so as to work out a more perfect plan. 3 days. Not to mention how long it would take for the second batch of elites to sneak in. They couldn't even finish the handover of intelligence. Wang Qinglei nodded to show that he understood, but he still said the same thing. The sooner the better. It doesn't seem to be so urgent yet. Ju's voice sounded slowly. I know the situation in your country. Your president and prime minister still have at least a year. Oh, maybe less than a year. It's winter now, and their terms will end in late autumn tomorrow. Nearly a year is enough for us to prepare well. I think 3 months later, it's probably the spring festival or the first lunar month of Zhongzhou state. We can all be well prepared. At that time, we can give Beihai a big New Year gift, isn't it? It's very ceremonial. Wang Qinglei praised with a poker face, but it's extremely stupid. Ju's face darkened and he didn't speak. I said to start in advance not only because of the two leaders' terms of office, but also for your consideration. Zhongzhou state will do its best to help you avoid an enemy that none of you want to meet. Believe me, none of you, including His Majesty, wants to meet him. Everyone froze for a moment. You mean Li Tianlan? Yagyu Kurumi asked directly. Today, Zhongzhou state also had a new invincible realm expert, Saint, and the top invincible realm expert, Gong Sunqi. But looking at all the experts in Zhongzhou state, Yagyu Kurumi didn't know what others thought. At least, the last person he wanted to meet was Li Tianlan. And he was keenly aware that when he said the name, everyone's body tightened for a moment. Even the clouds and starlight around His Majesty unnaturally stagnated for a moment. Li Tianlan. Many people in the Dark World, and even most of them, thought that after the end of the chaos in Eastern Europe, except for the reclusive Lin clan and Lin Fengting, Li Tianlan was now the top expert in the Dark World. Whether they were convinced by this evaluation or not, it was true that no one was willing to face Li Tianlan and 13 floors. Did Li Tianlan agree to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai? His Majesty sat up straight and looked extremely serious. There is no definite news yet, but we all know that the possibility of their cooperation is very high. The two leaders have been to the desert prison. Li Tianlan did not give a clear response. He just said that he needed to think about it. What he promised was that if the war broke out, he would not appear on the battlefield. Wang Qinglei said. What else do we need to worry about? Moraid asked subconsciously. This promise is not reliable, at least we think so. The longer we delay, the more likely it is that Li Tianlan will break his promise. If a person really wants to break his promise, he can find a reason at will. It's not a problem to even think of a reason after doing it. What I want to say is that before Li Tianlan made this promise, he had not talked to Wang Shengxiao. When the two leaders visited Li Tianlan, Wang Shengxiao was also there. No one knows the content of their negotiation, but I can be sure that after Li Tianlan negotiated with Wang Shengxiao, Saint personally went to Mount Dibing and took away the coldness of 9 states. Wang Qinglei's voice was cold. This may be, snap. Before he could finish his words, a clear and melodious voice suddenly rang out. In an instant, the conference room, which was full of red and dark tones, was occupied by a haze. The haze was like light, like clouds and mist, boundless, with an almost eternal silence. The hazy light appeared and disappeared in an instant. Everyone's heart palpitated for a moment. In their line of sight, His Majesty's figure, he had stood up abruptly. The teacup in his hand was crushed by him. Looking at Wang Qinglei, his breath had become completely stiff. No one could see his expression, but everyone could feel His Majesty's solemnity at this time. Li Tianlan, His Majesty stared at Wang Qinglei. Took away the coldness of 9 states? Are you sure? Yes. Wang Qinglei frowned. He felt a little uncomfortable under His Majesty's gaze. How long ago did this happen? His Majesty's voice was still calm, but everyone could feel his annoyance. This matter was not a secret to Wang Qinglei, but it was ridiculous that they didn't know it until now. More than a month, nearly 2 months ago. Wang Qinglei replied. You. His Majesty suddenly raised his hand and pointed at Wang Qinglei, then put it down hard. He stood where he was and was silent for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and smiled. Fortunately, it's not too late. I don't understand what you mean. Wang Qinglei said slowly. That's because you don't know what the 13th floor is. His Majesty said heavily and suddenly said. I agree with Zhongzhou State's plan. Everyone, we don't have enough time. 1 month. I hope that within a month, We can start a war that can destroy Mount Dibing and Beihai. It can't be more than 50 days at most. Otherwise, we may encounter big trouble, real big trouble. What trouble? Li Tianlan alone fights against all of us? Zhu sneered. It's not Li Tianlan, His Majesty said slowly. It's Li Tianlan and the 13th floor. So, we must speed up all actions at all costs. Before His Majesty's voice faded away, his cell phone suddenly rang. Wang Qinglei subconsciously looked at the number, and his face changed slightly. He subconsciously picked it up and whispered, "Prime Minister." Everyone was stunned at the same time. They looked at Wang Qinglei and didn't speak. What? No one could hear clearly what the Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State said on the phone. But suddenly, Wang Qinglei's face changed dramatically, and he stood up all at once. His body trembled slightly, and his face was a little pale. His Majesty looked at this scene, and his heart suddenly sank. Wang Qinglei held the table with one hand, and tried his best to hold the phone with the other. Chen Fangqing was still talking on the phone. Wang Qinglei's body gradually became stable. However, his face was still somewhat pale, and there was undisguised fear on his face. Okay, I understand, Wang Qinglei said slowly and silently put down the phone. What's the matter? His Majesty asked, pretending to be calm. Wang Qinglei glanced at everyone and didn't know what to say for a moment. He just asked everyone to speed up their actions, but in the blink of an eye, he suddenly heard the bad news from Zhongzhou State. Even with his will, he found it difficult to speak at this moment. Everyone. Wang Qinglei hesitated and said slowly. There are some problems in Beihai, and we are in trouble. But I don't think this is a reason for us to postpone the action. What trouble? Be more specific. His Majesty's tone was a little impatient. In one night, Zhongzhou State lost 4 major generals lurking in Beihai. Our people suffered heavy losses, and the elites of the superpowers were also greatly affected. Wang Qinglei smiled bitterly and said, I think you will soon see the battle damage. Chapter 837. Wang Qinglei spoke very quickly, which was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Before he could finish his sentence, the phone started ringing one after another. The representatives of several major forces present were still immersed in the news that Beihai had killed 4 major generals of Zhongzhou State overnight. When they heard that their forces had also suffered losses, the casualties came before they could even react. The meeting was completely suspended. Everyone picked up the phone almost at the same time, including Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Qinglei, who had already picked up the phone, looked a little scary. Opposite him, His Majesty still stood there. Silence was golden. He had no specific subordinates or forces. Knights Templars belonged to Moraid. Jifeng Sword Raining School belonged to Yagyu Kurumi, and the Jiang family of South America belonged to Jiang Guochu. So he seemed to have no battle damage. But from another perspective, every elite lost by Knights Templars, Jifeng Sword Raining School, and the Jiang family of South America could be regarded as his loss. The starlight cloud that enveloped his whole body was slightly fluctuating. His mood seemed to have recovered, but Wang Qinglei could clearly feel His Majesty's eyes on him. Wang Qinglei glanced at him. The moment their eyes met, His Majesty's eyes turned slightly and fell on Wang Xiaoyao. Wang Qinglei knew what it meant. In fact, even if Wang Xiaoyao, who had no way out, sat here, everyone still could not trust him 100%. Moreover, the timing of the Wang family of Beihai's attack was too coincidental, which made people inevitably suspect that someone had leaked the information. No one else was in a position to do so. Only Wang Xiaoyao seemed to have the most reason. In the hazy cloud, there was a flash of killing intent that no one had noticed. His Majesty's eyes that turned to Wang Xiaoyao quickly retracted and fell on Wang Qinglei again. His meaning was obvious. If Wang Xiaoyao was really the leak, as long as he had a clear suspicion, His Majesty would personally take action and keep him in this conference room forever without any evidence. His injury had not recovered, and it could even be said that it was far from recovery. But at this stage of the invincible realm, there were really too few people who could pose a threat to him. Wang Xiaoyao was not one of them. His Majesty could be sure that even if Wang Xiaoyao hid part of his strength, he would not be his opponent. Wang Qinglei shook his head imperceptibly. He did not doubt Wang Xiaorao at all. Although a large part of the major force's losses this time were related to Wang Xiaoyao's spies, it did not mean anything. Most importantly, Wang Xiaoyao and his spies did not know who the 4 major generals of Zhongzhou State were. And Beihai's actions were directly aimed at Zhongzhou State. There was something wrong in Zhongzhou State. Or in other words, some inexplicable problems that no one knew. Bastard! In the fierce roar, Moraid, the current head knight of the temple, suddenly stood up, his eyes cold. Wang Shengxiao, he's courting death. Qinglei's eyes were. Wang Bai. Wang and Qinglei's. He remembered the loss of the 4 major generals. He also heard about the losses of the superpowers. In Knights Templars, a great knight commander of the half-step invincible realm died in the hands of Firmament, including more than 20 Knights Templars. Knights Templars were the absolute main force in Knights Templars. The threshold was the fire-flaming realm. No matter where they were, they could be regarded as super elites or middle-level cornerstones. The chief knight was also a half-step invincible realm expert. But there were also differences in the half-step invincible realm. He was facing a top half-step invincible realm expert like Firmament. There was no doubt about the result. Wang Xiaoyao, shouldn't you give me an explanation? Tianhai Wuji slowly stood up, his hand subconsciously gripping the blade at his waist. Limitless Palace has quite a number of them. You were the one who hid the elites. You said that Huangfu Renjia was absolutely reliable. Reliable? Ha, tell me, which part is reliable? Huangfu Renjia had been captured as soon as the battle had begun. And the North Sea Legion was everywhere he had been during the past 2 months. Almost all of the elites of the Limitless Palace that Huangfu Renjia had encountered had been wiped out. What did that mean? Tell me, what do you mean? Wang Xiaorao was also on the phone. His expression kept changing. Gloominess, astonishment, bewilderment, and finally helplessly cruelty. His Majesty saw all the changes in his expression and said slowly, "It's not him. It's not him just because you say so." Tianhai Wuji suddenly turned around and glared at His Majesty. He was not His Majesty's follower. In the face of such a huge loss, he would not be polite at all. Moraid narrowed his eyes and took a step forward subconsciously. He had always claimed to be the loyal dog at His Majesty's feet, loyal and devoted, and would not allow anyone to offend His Majesty. His Majesty waved his hand, glanced at Tianhai Wuji and said slowly, "I accepted the Pope's coronation." Tianhai Wuji was stunned. "I've been observing His Highness Wang Xiaoyao's reaction just now." His Majesty continued to speak. Tianhai Wuji's brows loosened, and he finally gave a muffled snort. The Pope's coronation was absolutely famous in the dark world. It greatly strengthened the willpower, and made the perception more acute. Under such circumstances, His Majesty could see Wang Xiaoyao's every move clearly from the corner of his eyes. At that moment, Wang Xiaoyao's reaction was exactly the same as that of the other superpowers. This couldn't be something that could be achieved by so-called acting skills. His Majesty could feel that Wang Xiaoyao really didn't want the alliance to suffer any big losses this time. Wang Xiaoyao raised his head and looked at His Majesty, who had spoken out to protect him. After a long time, he moved and said with a faint smile, "Should I thank you for saving my life? Tut. There are so many invincible realm experts. If they think it's me, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave today." "Your Highness, you're too kind." His Majesty chuckled. "That's right." Moraid nodded. "It's definitely not King Xiaoyao who should be glad to have saved his life, but a great grandmaster." His eyes were cold as he looked at Tianhai Wuji. "I can understand your feelings, but you must apologize for your rudeness to His Majesty just now. You've gone too far." Tianhai Wuji slowly stood up and held the hilt of the saber at his waist tightly. Moraid was indeed the strongest among all the invincible realm experts present, except for His Majesty, who people couldn't see through. But Tianhai Wuji was also not a weak person. In the last divine list, he was already in the top 10, and now he was not far from the peak of the invincible realm. He was a great grandmaster in the field of saber, and the saber was originally a fierce weapon. If they really fought to the death, he might not be afraid of Moraid. "Apologize and continue the meeting." If you don't apologize, I'll kill you right here. Moraid was expressionless. Yagyu Kurosumi moved intentionally or unintentionally. Jiang Guochu also moved intentionally or unintentionally. Tianhai Wuji's face changed, and he was a little embarrassed. Forget it, this is not the most important thing. His Majesty waved his hand, sat down again, knocked on the table and said slowly, "It's impossible for His Highness Wang Xiaoyao to leak information. The people of Zhongzhou State can hide for so many years, and it's unlikely that they will be exposed in the near future. But it happened. Everyone, don't you think this feeling is very strange? Or rather, this feeling is very familiar?" This feeling was indeed very strange. But there were not many people who felt familiar with it. This kind of inexplicable but accurate intelligence is almost strange. It's like someone has foresight. Don't you think this pattern is familiar? His Majesty reminded softly. Samsara Palace. Jiang Guochu suddenly came to his senses. The intelligence system of Samsara Palace had always been the most inexplicable. For many things, their intelligence transmission speed was even slower than that of the ordinary second-tier forces in the Dark World. It was an ordinary second-tier force in the Dark World, but the speed and precise judgment of the intelligence of the superpowers were enough to make everyone's scalp numb. It was impossible to guard against them. No one knew how many spies the Samsara Palace had planted in the superpowers, or what they knew. Before the master of Samsara Palace died, the Samsara Palace had used its unique intelligence to set up one wonderful trap after another. Many times, the superpowers felt that they had won and were full of confidence, but the development of things was always led in a completely unfavorable direction because of an inexplicable trifle. It seemed like a coincidence. But the beginning of Samsara Palace, the establishment of the 12 supermasters, and even the destruction of Night Spirit on the eve of the final battle of Heaven Capital, were all caused by these seemingly inexplicable little things. And now, Samsara Palace. The Wang family of Beihai. Once the two superpowers joined forces, with the accurate and strange intelligence system of Samsara Palace, the Wang family of Beihai could set off a storm in Beihai in the shortest time. Qin Weibai again? Yagyu Kurumi frowned, and his tone was a little complicated. Even if the master of Samsara Palace hadn't died, most of the time, Qin Weibai had been controlling the operation of Samsara Palace. For the entire Dark World, she was a rare and extraordinary woman. Almost all of the arrangements that made the superpowers and even the countries suffer were made by her. Her arrangements might not have been flawless, but at the beginning, they were absolutely exquisite. By the time everyone came to their senses, it was already too late. They could only struggle in the trap. The arrangements she made over and over again could be said to be magnificent. She left countless images to the whole Dark World. Sharp, dreamy, perfect, and powerful. Countless people were crazy about her. For example, Wang Xiaoyao, who was sitting here today. For example, Jiang Qianyan, who had died. There were many people. But she finally appeared beside Li Tianlan. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, Samsara Palace disappeared, and Qin Weibai seemed to have restrained herself and went to the Lin clan. This time, was she secretly making a move again? The style seemed to be slightly different, but the general feeling did not change at all. Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai. Everyone's heart was extremely complicated. This man and woman, who were so deeply in love that everyone in the Dark World knew, were names that no one present wanted to mention. And they were also opponents that they did not want to meet. No matter who it is. His Majesty's voice was calm and peaceful. It's meaningless to discuss these now. The most important thing is the battle damage. He sat down again and knocked on the table. Wuji Palace's layout in Beihai suffered heavy losses, almost 1/3. Tianhai Wuji's face was cold. Yagyu Kurumi froze, gritted his teeth and said, "The loss of Jifeng Sword Raining School is similar to that of Wuji Palace." Jiang Guochu was a little confused. He hesitated for a moment and said in confusion, "Our loss is about 1/3. His Majesty glanced at Moraid. Moraid was smiling bitterly. He touched his nose and said, "What a coincidence. The loss of Knights Templars is also about 1/3. Everyone's face became extremely solemn. Wang Qinglei's body was completely tense. He gritted his teeth and said in a dry voice, "The loss of Zhongzhou state this time is about 1/3 of all its forces." Ha 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 ha, ha ha. His Majesty suddenly laughed. "Look everyone, look how interesting it is. It's a 1/3 loss. It's so interesting. Is this a coincidence?" He knocked on the table and whispered, "I didn't want to mention the goddess, but now it seems that our dear goddess wants to dominate the overall situation in the war in Beihai." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.